Oh, he's got some comments there. I'll have to go back to those in a minute. Let's have a look. Got some comments to go over. Yes. Okay, Buster.
It's the echo in your brain. You know you can't sustain the misconceptions in your mind. One day you'll see for sure what all of this was for. Then you can leave it all behind. The journey begins. I am the one, yeah, that will show the proof. I am the one, yeah, that is searching for the truth. I am the whispers of the logic in your mind. I am an agent of the logos. In the beginning was found this thing that cannot speak. It's how we all truly learn. It's only ever attained when one lets go of fear. So don't let wisdom pass you by. The journey begins. I am the one, yeah, that will show the proof. I am the one, yeah, that is searching for the truth. I am the whispers of the logic in your mind. I am an agent of the logos. It was there all along. How could I never have seen this thing that's danced all around? It wasn't until I left behind the things I believed that I could see things so clear. The journey begins. Become the one, yeah, that will show the proof. Become the one, yeah, that is searching for the truth. Become the whispers of the logic in their minds. Become an agent of the logos. Become an agent of the logos. We are the agents of the logos.
And we are live. Welcome everybody. It is Logic Night Tuesdays. It is Tuesday, isn't it? Yeah, it is Logic Night. I didn't really know what we were going to go over tonight. We have recently read over a few things, and some wise lady has wrote some words I think we'll go over about learning and the process of learning. Don't know how long we'll get with that, but I was just looking at some comments. I was just checking them on the YouTube. Because we were having a conversation the other night. Some Messages were disappeared, so I have to keep checking these messages before they disappear. Oh, we see we're having a discussion about angular size and the size of angles and whether the angular size is different. Somebody's trying to give me advice. I don't need it, thank you very much. I don't know. What's Dan going on about? Wow, this is kicking off pretty soon, isn't it, Dan? Straight off the bat. I don't even know what that means. Anybody translate? Dan, he seems to be going crazy. More gents. Try thinking more, gents. Past grade school and into real life observations and measurements that are off paper, model and diagram.
Is he still sore?
I haven't. Well, I mean, he's obviously come. He's still hot from last night. You've not been thinking about us all this time, have you, Dan? It's all right. Be okay.
Okay, we'll acknowledge you're a famous flat earther. You happy now? We all know you now.
I think he's a crazy flat earther at the minute. But, I mean, he is giving me that impression. Yeah, I think, says Dan is a great example of a flat earth. I would have to agree. You're the sort of flat earther that everybody wants to see, I think. The showman. We're about something different here. I think people that tune into listen to us, I think they might have had enough of that old show flat earth. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, we were just watching Cambridge Skeptics, and they've got a thing about critical thinking. I think I don't want to sound like we do a thing called advanced simplicity. It's about trying to simplify it down. Now, the critical thinking in that is to critically think and make something as simple as possible. I don't think that's the similar sort of critical thinking that they're doing. Intellectual critical thinking is different, I think. And I don't think anybody can teach me. Danny is, look at it. Pay no attention to the chat. Dan's going crazy. It's okay, Danny. This is logic night tonight. And we had a discussion last night about angles and angular size and how the angular size is just the size of the angle. I mean, we did have a thing, and we have one of the tests that we did when we went out to the beach with the auto level is exactly that thing. The size of something and the proportionality of that size to the distance it is away. I mean, we've got tests of it. We went live while we were doing it. We had a pretty good day. Everybody was in the Discord watching it. It was a pretty good day out there. It felt like we were all out there together at the same time while we were doing it. Even though it was just us getting wet. But yeah, we've done loads of tests about this angular size. I'm doing bunny ears because it's stadiometric range finding. It's just a ratio. Vertical height over horizontal distance. The angle obviously changes, but I mean, if anybody wants to come over and have a chat about it, geometric principles of what it is that we're talking about, I'm fine to do that. See you later, Dan. It is logic night. I'm not too sure this is the place for you tonight, Dan. Don't think you can slow down enough. Just relax. Okay, so do you want us to do a bit of this reading if you think anything rings a bell or anything you want to have a chat about? But this is extract of I'll just read it. Lost Tools of Learning. That I, whose experience of teaching is extremely limited, should presume to discuss education is a matter, surely, that calls for no apology. It is a kind of behaviour to which the present climate of opinion is wholly favourable. Bishops air their opinions about economics, biologists about metaphysics, inorganic chemists about theology. The most irrelevant people are appointed to highly technical ministries, and plain, blunt men write to papers to say that Epstein and Picasso do not know how to draw. Epstein? Have you ever heard him as an artist? I don't know. Up to a certain point, and provided the criticisms are made with a reasonable modesty, these activities are commendable. Too much specialisation is not a good thing. There is also one excellent reason why the veriest amateur may feel entitled to have an opinion about education. For if we are not all professional teachers, we have all, at some time or another, been taught. Even if we learnt nothing, perhaps in particular, if we learn nothing, our contribution to the discussion may have a potential value. However, it is in the highest degree improbable that the reforms I propose will ever be carried into effect. Neither the parents, nor the training colleges, nor the examination boards, nor the boards of governors, nor the ministries of education will countenance them for a moment, for they amount to this, that if we are to produce a society of educated people fitted to preserve their intellectual freedom amid the complex pressures of our modern society, we must turn back the wheel of progress some 400 or 500 years, to the point at which education began to lose sight of its true object, towards the end of the Middle Ages. Before you dismiss me with the inappropriate phrase, reactionary, romantic, medievalist, laudator, temperous acty, praiser of pastimes, or whatever tag comes first to hand, I will ask you to consider one or two miscellaneous questions that hang about at the back, perhaps of all our minds, and occasionally pop out to worry us. When we think about the remarkably early age at which the young men went to university in, let us say, Tudor times, and thereafter were held fit to assume responsibility for the conduct of their own affairs, we are altogether comfortable about the artificial propagation of intellectual childhood and adolescence into the years of physical maturity, which is so marked in our own day. To postpone the acceptance of responsibility to a late date brings with it a number of psychological complications which, while they may interest the psychiatrist, are scarcely beneficial either to the individual or to society. The stock argument in favour of postponing the school leaving age and prolonging the period of education generally is there is now so much more to learn than there was in the Middle Ages. This is partially true, but not wholly. The modern boy and girl are certainly taught more subjects, but does that always mean that they actually know more? You liking this? I like it. Everybody all right with my talking? And I'll
love it. Love it. Yeah, it's great.
Would be better if Emma was reading it, I think, but I'm doing my best.
I'm sorry, I fell asleep. What were you saying, Bev? Just kidding. You're doing great.
Okay. Right. Has it ever struck you as odd or unfortunate that today, when the proportion of literacy throughout Western Europe is higher than it has ever been, people should have become susceptible to the influence of advertisement and mass propaganda to an extent hitherto unheard of and unimagined? Do you put this down to the mere mechanical fact that the press and the radio and so on have made propaganda much easier to distribute over a wide area? Or do you sometimes have an uneasy suspicion that the product of modern educational methods is less good than he or she might be at disentangling fact from opinion and the proven from the plausible? Have you ever, in listening to a debate among adult and presumably responsible people, been fretted by the extraordinary inability of the average debater to speak to the question or to meet and refute the arguments of speaker on the other side? Or have you ever pondered upon the extremely high incidence of irrelevant matter which crops up at committee meetings, and upon the very rarity of persons capable of acting as chairman of committees? And when you think of this, and think that most of our public affairs are settled by debates and committees, have you ever felt a certain sinking of the heart? Have you ever followed a discussion in the newspapers or elsewhere and noticed how frequently writers fail to define the terms they use? Or how often, if one man does define his terms, another will assume in his reply that he was using the terms in precisely the opposite sense to that in which he has already defined them? Have you ever been faintly troubled by the amount of slipshod syntax going about? And if so, are you troubled because it's inelegant, or because it may lead to dangerous misunderstandings? I think that's
riddled.
Absolutely brilliant.
Absolutely. They're riddled today with this. Riddled.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Took the words right out of my mouth, Bev.
Yeah. Have you ever followed a discussion in the newspaper or elsewhere and noticed how frequently writers fail to define the terms they use?
What did we talk about at the beginning of Trivium, right?
Yeah.
And before that, come to terms, define the terms.
It's all about the terms. Do you ever find that young people, when they have left school, not only forget most of what they have learned, that is only to be expected, but forget also or betray that they have never really known how to tackle a new subject for themselves? Have you ever bothered? Are you often bothered by coming across grown men, women who seem unable to distinguish between a book that is sound, scholarly, and properly documented, and one that is, to a trained eye, very conspicuously documented? Very conspicuously none of these things, or who cannot handle a library catalogue, or who, when faced with a book of reference, betray a curious inability to extract from it the passages relevant to the particular question in which interests them? Do you often come across people for whom all their lives a subject remains a subject, divided by watertight bulkheads from all other subjects, so that they experience very great difficulty in making an immediate mental connection between, let us say, algebra and detective fiction, sewage disposal and the price of salmon, or more generally, between such spheres of knowledge as philosophy and economics, or chemistry and art. Are you ever occasionally perturbed by the things written by adult men and women for adult men and women to read? We find a well-known biologist writing a weekly paper to the effect that it is more argument against the existence of a creator. I think he put it more strongly, but since I have most unfortunate misled the reference, I will put this claim at his lowest. An argument against the existence of a creator, that the same kind of variations which are produced by natural selection can be produced at will by stock breeders. One might feel tempted to say that it is rather an argument for the existence of a creator. Actually, of course, it's neither. All it proves is that same material causes, recombination of the chromosomes by crossbreeding and so forth, are sufficient to account for all observed variations, just as the variations combinations of the same dozen tones are materially sufficient to account for Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata and the noise the cat makes by walking on the keys. But the cat's performance neither proves nor disproves the existence of Beethoven, and all that is proved by the biologist argument is that he was unable to distinguish between material and a final cause. Here is a sentence from no less academic a source than a front page article in Times Literary Supplement. The Frenchman Alfred Epinus pointed out that certain species, e.g. ants and wasps, can only face the horrors of life and death in association. I do not know what the Frenchman actually did say. What the Englishman says he said is patently meaningless. We cannot know whether life holds anything anything horror for the ant, nor in what sense the isolated wasp you can kill upon the window pane can be said to face or not face the horrors of death. The subject of the article is mass behaviour in man, and the human motives have been unobtrusively transferred from the main proposition to the supporting instance. Thus, the argument, in effect, assumes what is set out to prove a fact, which would become immediately apparent if it were presented in a formal syllogism. This is only a small and haphazard example of vice which pervades the whole books, particularly books written by men of science and metaphysical subjects. Another quotation from the same issue of the TLS, I don't know what that is, comes from fittingly from here to wind up this random collection of disquieting thoughts. This time from review of Sir Richard Livingstone's Some Tasks for Education. More than once the reader is reminded of the value of an intensive study of at least one subject, so as to learn the meaning of knowledge and what precision and persistence is needed to attain it. Yet there is elsewhere full recognition of the distressing fact that a man may be master in one field and show no better judgment in this than his neighbour elsewhere. He remembers what he has learnt, but forgets altogether how he learned it. I would draw your attention particularly to the last sentence, which offers an explanation of what the writer calls the distressing fact that the intellectual skills bestowed upon us by our education are not readily transferable to subjects other than those in which we acquire them. He remembers what he has learnt, but forgets altogether how he learned it. It is not a great defect of our education today, a defect traceable through all of the disquieting symptoms of trouble that I have mentioned, that although we often succeed in teaching our pupils subjects we fail lamentably on the whole in teaching them how to think. They learn everything except the art of learning. It is as though we had taught a child mechanically and by the rule of thumb to play the harmonious blacksmith upon the piano, but had never taught him the scale or how to read music so that he might have memorized the harmonious blacksmith. He still had not the faintest notion of how to proceed from that to tackle the last rose of summer. Why do I say as though? In certain of the arts and crafts, we sometimes do precisely this, requiring a child to express himself in paint before we teach him how to handle the colours and the brush. There is a school of thought which believes this is to be the right way to set about the job. But observe, it is not the way in which a trained craftsman will go about to teach himself a new medium. He, having learned by experience the best way to economize labour and take the thing by the right end, will start off by doodling about on an odd piece of material in order to give himself the feel of the tool. Let us now look at the medieval scheme of education, the syllabus of the schools. It does not matter for the moment what was devised for small children or for older students or for how long people were supposed to take over it. What matters is the light it throws upon the men of the Middle Ages, supposed to be the object and the right order of the educative process. Right, I'm going to have a break. Let me have a bit of a brew. What do you think about that? I mean, it's a bit of a mouthful and it's a bit of a, it's a bit much to take in. I'm reading it out loud. And I don't know whether that's the best way of this sort of stuff going in. I've already read this earlier. So I'm getting the gist of what's going on here.
Well, it is the idea that what most people think learning is, it isn't. Right? I think that's the whole premise of this pamphlet, if you will. It's not even a book. And I have the same thing, so it's a little bit easier for me because I'm following along as you read it. But the thing that I got out of it is again that what we consider learning, and I don't know when this was written.
57, I think.
Yeah, but it's only gotten worse since then, much worse since then. As far as how people learn, how children learn primarily, what they learn, but definitely how they learn, the process of learning, because it is a process, and you're not taught that in school. You're just presented with things. You're given the garden hose or the fire hose in some cases of information, and you're expected to retain that and then regurgitate it back. That's the essence of learning today. That's why you have so many people without any common sense, without any critical thinking skills, despite the people that come by and say that they have all the critical thinking skills. So that's what I'm getting from this is this person pushing back on education in as a whole, and saying what we call education is not education. There's a lost process of learning that we need to, if we want to be educated, that we need to get back to. And it'll be interesting to go through the rest of it, see what other people think. But I think we as a group of people have either stumbled on that, or it's the Logos, as we say around here, or whatever. But we've been traveling down this road without knowing that this particular writer has said, this is the road you should travel down.
Yeah. Yeah, we're already going down the road, and this landed on our laps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and we're digging it, right? Somebody said in the chat, Eric's liking it. Yeah, this is literally this is how Logos works with us. And that first bit of reading, wow, that was a mouthful. But I think that was them laying the path for what's to come now. That's why I took a break for this particular bit. This is the bit that we've already been on. Just about to go over the Middle Ages and the learning. How they learned in the Middle Ages. And I do believe this is like the lady says, the schooling system was changing back then, and enough to cause for concern in these worrying times of debate. Now, most of us have realised that whatever there was meant to be as a debate round here, that's definitely not. I mean, I don't know what this woman would think nowadays. Be dismayed at what a debate is.
There is no debate here.
Mm-hmm.
As from my experience, for example, I have watched, for example, Dr. Sangenis versus Dr. White. This was many. They had many discussions on religious topics, but this is what I can say, that this is debate. So they were presenting their positions. They were answering questions. They were addressing arguments. They had conclusions, and it was presented in debate form. It took like 3 hours. And that's kind of discussion I would call it is debate. But I cannot see, for example, here in internet or Discord, such debates, formal debates about anything. They are just at best discussions or quarrels or shouting at each other, but not debates. I miss that. I this is my desire
I'm with you. I am with you. I would really like to see a good debate. I'm sure there's many around here. It's just that it seems that people have lost what a debate is. It's an intellectual battle.
Yes, but very formal, very strict rules, and both sides are obeying these rules, and this is like much very interesting, and it is going back to medieval times where university students or professors were doing that debates in public on the courtyard or whatever. So it was their intellectual life then, but not now, sadly.
Oh, right. Okay. So you want me to carry on? I've had a smoke.
Yeah.
So the idea is we're now looking at this. I'll start again, right? We're looking over the medieval, right? So let us now look at the medieval scheme of education, the syllabus of the schools. It does not matter for the moment whether it was devised for small children or for older students or how long people were supposed to take over it. What matters is the light it throws upon what men of the Middle Ages supposed to be the object and the right order of the education process. The syllabus was divided into 2 parts, the trivium and the quadrivium. The second part, the quadrivium, consisted of subjects, bunny ear quotes, right, and need not for the moment concern us. The interesting thing for us is the composition of the trivium, which preceded the quadrivium and was the preliminary discipline for it. It consisted of 3 parts: grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric, in that order.
Yeah, and just to note, dialectic is logic.
Well, it does go through it, right?
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, it's different than what we've been saying when we've been doing the trivium. This says dialectic, but I mean, it does get explained. Yeah, and I think it's a better term, really. Anyway, so now the first thing we notice is that 2, at any rate, of these subjects are not what we should call subjects at all. They are only methods of dealing with subjects. Grammar, indeed, is a subject in the sense that it does mean definitely learning a language. At that period, it meant learning Latin, but language itself is simply the medium in which thought is expressed. The whole of the trivium was, in fact, intended to teach the pupil the proper use of the tools of learning before he began to apply them to subjects at all. First, he learned a language, not just how to order a meal in a foreign language, but the structure of a language, and hence of language itself, what it was, how it was put together, and how it worked. Secondly, he learned how to use language, how to define his terms and make accurate statements, how to construct an argument, how to detect fallacies in argument. Dialectic, that is to say, embraced logic and disputation. Disputation. That's a good word, isn't it? We'll have to look that one up. I've not got
it. It is. Got to look that one up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody help us out. Thirdly, he learned to express himself in language, how to say what he had to say elegantly and persuasively. This is why I really like the trivium. I've been teaching myself to be who I am now, reading out of books and live on YouTube.
So disputation.
Go on.
The act of disputing, verbal controversy.
Oh.
And that's the first definition. The second definition: an academic exercise in oral defense of a thesis by formal logic.
Oh, brilliant. So that's dialectic.
Boom.
Logic and disputation.
Yep.
Yeah, I got debate or argument, promoting consensus rather than disputation.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. So that's exactly what we're doing here, isn't it?
Yep.
Arguing for or against something. It's exactly what this is meant for. This is the trivium. The correct use of the words, which some people definitely get upset with. When we try to define things, why we try to define the terms, people like to change them on us. We try to be as exact as possible. Other people like to be really vague. This is why we aren't liked so much. But this seems to be exactly what the trivium is about. That's what you're doing, first off. I like it. At the end of the course, this is the bit that I liked. At the end of the course, he was required to compose a thesis upon some theme set by his masters or chosen by himself, and afterwards to defend his thesis against the criticism of the faculty. By this time, he would have learned, or woe betide him, not merely to write an essay on paper, but to speak audibly and intelligibly about a platform, and to use his wits quickly when heckled. There would also be questions, cogent and shrewd, from those who had already run the gauntlet of debate. I'm liking it, right? It's almost as though all of these things coming together.
Yeah, this was the way. This was the way where you became a doctor. You had to defend yourself on your own attacks from professors to your thesis, And if you successfully could defend that, you are able to be doctor.
Mm-hmm. Says it is, of course, quite true that bits and pieces of the medieval tradition still linger or have been revived in the ordinary school syllabus of today. Some knowledge of grammar is still required when learning a foreign language, perhaps I should say, is again required. For during my own lifetime, we passed through a phase with the teaching of declensions and conjections was considered rather reprehensible, and it was considered better to pick these things up as we went along. School debating societies flourish. Essays are written on the necessity for self-expression is stressed and perhaps even overstressed, but these activities are cultivated more or less in detachment as belonging to the special subjects in which they are pigeonholed, rather than as forming one coherent scheme of mental training to which all subjects stand in a subordinate relation. Grammar belongs especially to the subject of foreign languages, and essay writing to the subject called English, while dialectic has become almost entirely divorced from the rest of the curriculum and is frequently practiced unsystematically and out of school hours as a separate exercise, only very loosely related to the main business of learning. Taken by and large, the great difference of emphasis between the two concepts hold good. Modern education concentrates on teaching subjects, leaving the method of thinking, arguing, and expressing one's conclusions to be picked up by the scholar as he goes along. Medieval education concentrated on first forging and learning to handle the tools of learning, using whatever subject came handy as a piece of material on which to doodle, until the use of the tool became second nature.
So can I jump in here for a second? Because I just had a thought. I want to know what the rest of the guys in Discord think, and on the YouTubes as well. What do you folks think of when you hear the term medieval? It's an honest question.
Dark
it's not
Ages,
a gotcha question.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Does anybody else have a different opinion of when you hear the term medieval? What do you think?
I didn't hear what Bev said. What did Bev say?
Dark Ages.
A period in history, exactly. That's what I think of.
But about the people, the people, or the culture of the people, or maybe the education of the people, right?
Unsophisticated, maybe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Certainly not as refined, shall we say, as modern people. Let's say in the last 200-300 years, maybe even 400 years.
That's what that term would project. Yeah.
Anybody disagree with that? I'm not on the YouTube, so I can't see what they're saying.
I can agree, but this is not specific to medieval, because this system of education was taken and from ancient Greek and Roman. So this was not invented in medieval times.
Agreed.
Maybe universities they were just development of philosophical schools.
I get out of it is, though, I think she's saying that up until then, this system was fine for the best education for kings, leaders.
That's
right.
That's the thing, right? That's the thing. That's the thing, right? So, and I'm going somewhere with this, right? Because I'll lay it out, right? I'll just put it out there. I don't think where mankind has been in the past as it relates to learning, like Middle Ages and before, like Socrates and Aristotle, and going forward and into what the writer here is describing in the Middle Ages, I don't think that it's a coincidence that when that stuff was left behind, whenever that was left behind, because I don't know about anybody else, but I didn't get anything beyond grammar, right, in the trivium. Not formally, anyway. The closest thing I got to that was my dad saying, "You need to have some common sense or I'll knock it into you." That's about as close to dialectic and rhetoric as I ever got. Right?
Yeah.
So, but we all got grammar. So we were taught the language, whatever language you happen to have. But I was never taught this stuff. If you wanted logic or dialectic, you needed to go to either a very high-end secondary school, high school, where you would go to quote unquote debate class, or you would need to study logic and philosophy in university. That's where you would get some of this stuff, but never in, as part of a curriculum or learning process ever.
Yeah, it's like
right?
like she's saying. Yeah, they're subjects that you get taught, aren't
Right.
they, in university or whatever. They're not, like these are saying, the basic, the brush and scribbling bits to practice. That's what this trivium gives you. Gives you the ability to use the basic tools rather than them being some sort of hoity-toity subject that posh people can get to when they get to university, because it's not out of the reach of everyone. Where they like to try and put it there, don't they?
It definitely. But then when you do look at the reason why I asked about what people think about medieval, and to Paper's point, right, before even medieval, even if you go back to ancient times, the thought is, well, those people were backward, right? They were backward. They certainly weren't as sophisticated or intelligent as we are here today, right? They certainly don't have the world's knowledge on a mobile phone in their hands, right? To me, that's done purposely in some form. I that's just my take on it. Is that this lost process of learning, whatever it is, the trivium and maybe what comes after it, maybe other stuff she's going to talk about. I don't know. But to me, it's like, yeah, you look at that stuff and you go, oh, yeah, well, those people back then were, they lived in the dark ages. They were, they were savages. They didn't, so of course we wouldn't want to learn what they learned. We don't want to go back and look at what they learned. Well, this is what they learned. This is the stuff that they learned, the trivium. Why don't we learn that today? Why aren't children taught that today? It's a question. I'll leave you with it now. I'll stop rambling.
Yeah.
It just hit me.
Yeah,
the whole idea of medieval, right?
It's close to me because this is how I learned. Like, I literally had to start again. And I did it like this. So, to me, it's just natural. Very simple and very basic, and it's something like they said. They don't know at what sort of age or how long you take with it, and I presume once you start with this type of learning, but it's not learning; it's just a process. You can refine it. You can get better at it. You never stop using it. It's just critical thinking, a process.
Yes,
how to extract the most information and convey that to other people.
They were learning how to think first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Say and think. So, but I'm referring to what you, Kevin, said about phone. This cell phones can give us impression that we know something. But this is only impression. It makes us more happy that we know something.
Yep.
But in fact, we still know nothing and understand nothing. But in medieval times, they hadn't got any such kind of tools of quick information. So they have to be very cautious with making hypotheses, for example, or what to think about that if I don't know. about something, they had to be more cautious with their fantastic ideas.
Right.
You ready for us to continue a bit?
Yeah. By the way, if you need a break, Bev, I have the book as well, so I can pick up from you if you need.
Oh, do you want to have a go then?
I can if you like.
Yeah.
Did we leave?
It's
Yeah,
the,
where did we leave
subjects.
off? Yeah, okay. In quotes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So subjects, quote unquote, of some kind there must be, of course. One cannot learn the theory of grammar without learning an actual language, or learn to argue and orate without speaking about something in particular. The debating subjects of the Middle Ages were drawn largely from theology or from the ethics and history of antiquity. Often, indeed, they became stereotyped. Oh, that's interesting. They became stereotyped, especially towards the end of the period. And the far-fetched and wire-drawn absurdities of scholastic argument fretted Milton and provide food for merriment even to this day. Whether they were in themselves any more hackneyed or trivial than the usual subjects set nowadays for quote-unquote essay writing, I should not like to say. We may ourselves grow a little weary of, quote, a day in my holidays, unquote, and all the rest of it. But most of the merriment is misplaced, because the aim and object of the debating thesis has by now been lost sight of. A glib speaker in the Brains Trust once entertained his audience and reduced the late Charles Williams to helpless ragib by asserting that in the Middle Ages it was a matter of faith to know how many archangels could dance on the point of a needle. I need not say, I hope, that it never was a matter of faith. It was simply a debating exercise whose set subject was the nature of angelic substance. Were angels material? And if so, did they occupy space? The answer usually adjudged correct is, I believe that angels are pure intelligences, not material, but limited so that they may have location in space but not extension. I'm going to stop there for a second and just say, so it sounds like there was just a debate and then someone took words that somebody said and made a mockery of it. How many angels can dance on the head of a pin or needle? That's what it sounds like to me.
It was that's the topic of debate, but sometimes ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it still was exercise.
Exactly.
For logic. So you can debate about video games characters, for example.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Right.
You can make debate of it. Why not?
Right. Carrying on. So an analogy might be drawn from human thought, which is similarly non-material and similarly limited. Thus, if your thought is concentrated upon one thing, say the point of a needle, it is located there in the sense that it is not elsewhere. But although it is there, quote unquote, there, it occupies no space there. And there's nothing to prevent an infinite number of different people's thoughts being concentrated upon the same needle point at the same time. The proper subject of the argument is thus seen to be the distinction between location and extension in space. The matter on which the argument is exercised happens to be the nature of angels. Although, as we have seen, it might equally well have been something else. That's to Paper's point, right? The practical lesson to be drawn from the argument is not the use of words like, quote unquote, there, in a loose and unscientific way, without specifying whether you mean, quote, located there, unquote, or, quote, occupying space there, unquote. Scorn in plenty has been poured out upon the medieval passion for hair splitting. But when we look at the shameless abuse made in print and on the platform of controversial on the platform of controversial expressions with shifting and ambiguous connotations, we may feel it in our hearts to wish that every reader and hearer had been so defensively armored by his education as to be able to cry, distinguo. I don't know what that means.
Like distinguish?
I don't know. It's quote, distinguo. distinguo.
It's
unquote.
To cry. It's like you need to be able to distinguish between
distinguish,
there.
yes, it is Latin word in first person. I distinguish.
It's
okay,
like,
there you go.
There are people there that know that they're crying. Like you, define your terms. That's what they're saying,
right.
isn't it? You know.
Yep.
Like
Gotcha.
That.
Yeah.
Distinguo.
Distinguo. For we let our young men and women go out unarmed. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
In a day when armor was never so necessary. But by teaching them all to read, we have left them at the mercy of the printed word. By the invention of the film and the radio, we have made certain that no aversion to reading shall secure them from the incessant battery of words. They do not know what the words mean. They do not know how to ward them off or blunt their edge or fling them back. They are a prey to words in their emotions instead of being the masters of them in their intellects. Wow.
Oh, what a statement.
That is freaking fantastic.
Yeah.
I got to read that again. Should I read that again?
Yeah.
I think I should read that again. For we let our young men and women go out unarmed in a day when armor was never so necessary. By teaching them all to read, we have left them at the mercy of the printed word. By the invention of the film and the radio, we have made certain that no aversion to reading shall secure them from the incessant battery of words. They do not know what the words mean. They do not know how to ward them off or blunt their edge or fling them back. They are a prey to words in their emotions instead of being the masters of them in their intellects. Damn, that's good.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's 1950s, this. The 1950s. 70 years have passed. And it's not got any better. It's got worse.
Much worse.
Definitely much worse. Yeah, then you add, I mean, in this writer's time, they had, obviously words and movies and film. Now you have the phones, the social media, the video. There's no chance. There's no chance.
But it also, this author gives us a clue why it was so much pressure on reading that people cannot be analphabets.
Mm-hmm.
We have joke in Poland about Afghanistan times, where there was war between Soviet Union and Afghanistan, and why the Soviet Union generally failed.
Right.
Because these Afghanistans cannot read, and they didn't read that Soviet Union army is invincible.
Exactly. Exactly right. Yeah, same thing happened to the Americans in Afghanistan too, so they didn't learn any lesson on that. Okay, carrying on. We who were scandalized in 1940 when men were sent to fight armored tanks with rifles are not scandalized when young men and women are sent into the world to fight masked propaganda with a smattering of, quote, subjects, unquote. Whew. Spicy. It's getting spicy, guys.
Yeah.
Holy cow. And when whole classes and whole nations become hypnotized by the arts of the spellbinder, we have the impudence to be astonished. Holy cow. Oh, man. This is freaking good.
1957?
Yes.
Wow.
1957. Holy hell.
So if it was that evident then, what the hell happened between then and now?
Just hidden it. He's gone.
Yeah, they did, for sure.
Shush. Don't tell them.
Oh, it gets
we're buried for sure. Yeah.
definitely. Oh, it gets better. This is a written tongue lashing here. Holy mackerel. We dole out lip service to the importance of education. Lip service. Twice the writer said it. Education lip service. And just occasionally a little grant of money. We postpone the school leaving age and plan to build bigger and better schools. The teachers slave conscientiously in and out of school hours. And yet, as I believe, all this devoted effort is largely frustrated because we have lost the tools of learning and in their absence can only make a botched and piecemeal job of it. Oh, man. I got to take a quick call. Bev, so you want to pick up from there?
Yeah, I will. Okay. I will say as well that when I was at school, I'm much like this lady's saying here, I didn't feel that I got anything out of it, right? I never thought I was any good at grammar, right? English. Never really got it. I understood maths because it was a bit of logic, but the rest of the learning process that I've gone through has been since I met the good people round here. This is where my extra thinking powers have come to fruition. The talking to people and stimulating the conversation and going back to the foundations of learning, like this lady's talking about. That's where my leaps and bounds in my personal education have come from. And we haven't even got into the rhetoric part of this yet. We're only right at the very beginning. And I think this is amazing. Where did we get to? Right, you ready for us to carry on? Yeah. Okay. What then are we to do? We cannot go back to the Middle Ages. That is a cry to which we have become accustomed. We cannot go back, or can we? Distinguo. I would like every term in that proposition defined. Does go back mean a retrogression in time, or the revision of an error? The first is clearly impossible per se. The second is a thing which wise men do every day. Cannot. Does this mean that our behaviour is determined irreversibly, or merely that such an action would be very difficult in view of the opposition it would proaction? Would be very difficult in view of the opposition it would provoke? Obviously, the 20th century is not and cannot be the 14th. But if the Middle Ages is, in this context, simply a picturesque phrase denoting a particular education theory, there seems to be no a priori reason why we should not go back to it with modifications, as we have already gone back with modifications to, let us say, the idea of playing Shakespeare plays as he wrote them, and not in the modernised versions of Kibber and Garrick, which once seemed to be the latest thing in theatrical progress. Let us amuse ourselves by imagining that such progressive retrogression is possible. Let us make a clean sweep of all educational authorities and flourish ourselves with a nice little school of boys and girls whom we may experimentally equip for the intellectual conflict along lines chosen by ourselves. We will endow them with exceptionally docile parents. We will staff our schools with teachers who are themselves perfectly familiar with the aims and methods of the trivium. We will have our building and staff large enough to allow our classes to be small enough for adequate handling. And we will postulate a board of examiners willing and qualified to test the products we turn out. Thus prepared, we will attempt to sketch out a syllabus, a modern trivium with modifications, and we'll see where we get to. But first, What age shall the children be? Well, if one is to educate them on novel lines, it will be better that they should have nothing to unlearn. Besides, one cannot begin a good thing too early, and the trivium, by its nature, not learning, but a preparation for learning, we will therefore catch him young, requiring our pupils not only that they should be able to read, write, and cipher. My views about child psychology are, I admit, neither orthodox nor enlightened. Looking back upon myself, since I am the child I know best, and the only child I can pretend to know from inside, I recognise 3 states of development. These, in a rough and ready fashion, I will call polparrot, the pert, and the poetic. The latter coinciding approximately with the onset of puberty. The polparrot stage is the one in which the learning by heart is easy and, on the whole, pleasurable, whereas reasoning is difficult and, on the whole, a little relished. At this age, one readily memorizes the shapes and appearances of things. One likes to recite the number plates of cars. One rejoices in the chanting of rhymes and rumble and thunder of unintelligible polysyllables. One enjoys the mere accumulation of things. The pert age, which follows upon this and naturally overlaps it to some extent, is characterized by contradicting, answering back, liking to catch people out, especially one's elders, and by the propounding of conundrums. Its nuance value is extremely high. It usually sets in about the 4th form. The poetic age is popularly known as the difficult age. It is self-centered. It yearns to express itself. It rather specializes in being misunderstood. It is restless and tries to achieve independence, and with good luck and good guidance, it should show the beginnings of creativeness, a reaching out towards a synthesis of what it already knows, and a deliberate eagerness to know and do some one thing in preference to all others. Now, it seems to me that the layout of the trivium adapts itself with a singular appropriateness to these 3 ages: grammar to the polparrot, dialectic to the pert, and rhetoric to the poetic age. Let us begin then with grammar. This, in practice, means the grammar of some language in particular, and it must be inflected language. The grammatical structure of an uninflected language is far too analytical to be tackled in any way without previous practice in dialectic. Moreover, the inflected languages interpret the uninflected, whereas the uninflected are of little use in interpreting the inflected. I will say at once, quite firmly, that the best grounding for education is the Latin grammar. I say this not because Latin is traditional and medieval, but simply because even a rudimentary knowledge of Latin cuts down the labour and pains of learning almost any other subject by at least 50%. It is the key to the vocabulary and structure of all of the Teutonic languages, as well as to the technical vocabulary of all the sciences and to the literature of the entire Mediterranean civilization, together with all its historical documents. Wow, pretty big importance on Latin there, right? Big. I never really knew that. Is it English is derived from Latin, is it? Or is it just a mess up?
Many words in English are from Latin.
But, you know, like, as she's saying this for Latin as the, you know, the learning for grammar.
Yes, because Latin is very in very good order. There are very few exceptions in this inflections and declinations and whatever.
Very precise with it.
Yes, precise. There are some exceptions, but so much less illogical thing to learn than in English, I think. Because sometimes you have to learn in English just the phrase without knowing why this in this way it is in English. Just it is. But in Latin there are less such examples. You can just predict what given word should be inflected or declined. So I think it is for systematics. It is very convenient language to learn.
Yeah. Well, yeah. She goes on here. Those whose pedantic preference for living language persuades them to deprive their pupil of all of these advantages might substitute Russian, whose grammar is still more primitive. Russian is, of course, helpful with the other Slav dialects. There is something also to be said for classical Greek, but my own choice is Latin. Having thus pleased the classicalists among you, I will proceed to horrify them by adding that I do not think it is either wise or necessary to cramp the ordinary pupil upon the Procrustean bed of the Augustan age, with its highly elaborate and artificial verse forms and oratory. Post-classical and medieval Latin, which was a living language right down to the end of the Renaissance, is easier and in some ways livelier. A study of it helps to dispel the widespread notion that learning and literature came to a full stop when Christ was born and only woke up again at the dissolution of the monasteries. Latin should be begun as early as possible. At the time, inflected speech seems no more astonishing than any other phenomenon in an astonishing world, and when the chanting of amo, amas, amat is ritually agreeable to the feelings as the chantings of eeny, meeny, miny, mo, during this age we must, of course, exercise the mind on other things besides Latin grammar. Observation and memory are the faculties most lively in this period, and if we are to learn a contemporary foreign language, we should begin now, before the facial and mental muscles become rebellious to strange intonations. Spoken French or German can be practiced alongside the grammatical discipline of the Latin. In English, meanwhile, verse and prose can be learned by heart, and the pupil's memory should be stored with stories of every kind of classical myth, European legend, and so forth. I do not think that the classical stories and masterpieces of ancient literature should be made the vile bodies on which to practice the techniques of grammar. That was a fault of medieval education, which we need not perpetuate. The stories can be enjoyed and remembered in English and related to their origin at a subsequent stage. Recitation aloud should be practiced individually or in chorus, for we must not forget that we are laying the groundwork for disputation and rhetoric. The grammar of history should consist, I think, of dates, events, antecedents and personalities, a set of dates to which one can peg all later historical knowledge is of enormous help later on in establishing the perspective of history. It does not greatly matter which dates. These are the kings of England will do very nicely, provided that they are accompanied by pictures of costumes, architecture, and every other day things, so that the mere mention of a date calls up a very strong visual presentment of the whole period. That's genius, that.
I'm back if you need a break.
Yeah, go on. That's good, though, right? It's a good time to stop. I'd never actually thought of that, like linking the histories of that so people can... I mean, you could really mess a kid up if you decided to teach them the history of all sorts of stupid stuff, right? You've got to make sure you're doing this precise. Otherwise, I can see how you can change
example,
history like this.
I was learning history, which I liked very much, especially ancient history, but learning in that way that I had to memorize this king was from this year to this year. His next was from this to this. He did this, wrote this. At his time was battle at this year, so I couldn't memorize it, and it was boring because I couldn't associate this with anything. So learning that this way for me is pointless. But if you can associate with dressing, with customs, with buildings, with whatever, you can have some kind of picture of these times.
So. It teaches you how to do the actual learning process, right? The more things that you can associate together, and the more you see them together, the more it'll just naturally come to. I think that's what she's saying, isn't it? Like in the back, when you hear of a date, all of this other information will just be surrounding you.
Not fragmented pieces, but like rather puzzle, which is getting to one.
Yeah.
If you gather all puzzles and you have greater picture of something.
Sort of like an instruction manual on how to, I don't know, maybe put information in there, tell a story about something.
Yeah, I mean, whoever got anything out of memorizing dates and places and names and then regurgitated them back.
Yeah, without those pictures to associate them with, it means nothing. I mean, I can remember history class just looking at a book. There's no pictures to associate anything. It was boring to me in school doing all of that. But
definitely. Yeah. Do you want me to carry on for you?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay. Geography will similarly be presented in its factual aspect with maps, natural features, and visual presentments of customs, costumes, flora, fauna, and so on. And I believe myself that the discredited and old-fashioned memorizing of a few capital cities, rivers, mountain ranges, etc., does no harm. Stamp collecting may be encouraged. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Science in the poll parrot period, I had to look that up as you guys were talking about the last paragraph because I didn't know what poll POLL dash parrot period, and that is to speak, repeat, or imitate like a parrot.
Oh,
yes. First, in early childhood, like 3 years old, they are just parroting without even understanding. But this is natural process. So and it hasn't to be disturbed. It is very, very important period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but seeing the word science and then poll parrot in the same sentence is interesting to me. It's like, yeah, okay, parroting back the science, right? We've talked about that quite extensively. Science in the poll parrot period arranges itself naturally and easily around collections, the identifying and naming of specimens, and in general, the kind of thing that used to be called natural philosophy, quote unquote. To know the name and properties of things is at this age a satisfaction in itself. To recognize a devil's coach horse at sight and assure one's foolish elders that in spite of its appearance, it does not sting. To be able to pick out Cassiopeia and the Pleiades, and perhaps even to know who Cassiopeia and the Pleiades were. To be aware that a whale is not a fish and a bat not a bird. All these things give a pleasant sensation of superiority, while to know a ring snake from an adder or a poisonous from an edible toadstool is a kind of knowledge that also has practical value. The grammar of mathematics begins, of course, with the multiplication table, which, if not learnt now, will never be learnt with pleasure, and with the recognition of geometrical shapes and the grouping of numbers. These exercises lead naturally to the doing of simple sums of arithmetic. More complicated mathematical processes may, and perhaps should, be postponed for the reasons which will presently appear. So far, except of course for the Latin, our curriculum contains nothing that departs very far from common practice. The difference will be felt rather in the attitude of the teachers, who must look upon all these activities less as, quote, subjects in themselves than as gathering together of material for use in the next part of the trivium. For what material is only of secondary importance, but it is as well that anything and everything which can be usefully committed to memory should be memorized at this period, whether it is immediately intelligible or not. The modern tendency is to try to force rational explanations on a child's mind at too early an age. Intelligent questions, spontaneously asked, should, of course, receive an immediate and rational answer. But it is a great mistake to suppose that a child cannot readily enjoy and remember things that are beyond his power to analyze, particularly if those things have strong imaginative appeal, as, for example, Kubla Khan, an attractive jingle like some of the memory rhymes for Latin genders, or an abundance of rich, resounding polysyllables like like the Quiquunque volt. I have no idea if I pronounced that right. Quincunque. No clue how to pronounce that. So there's my education for you.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. I think you did quite well.
You can write it in live chat because I cannot repeat that.
I'll get it if he wants.
You got it? You got it, Bev? Okay, yeah, put it in the live chat. This reminds me of the grammar of theology. I shall add it to the curriculum because theology is the mistress science without which the whole educational structure will necessarily lack its final synthesis. Those who disagree about this will remain content to leave their pupils' education still full of loose ends. This will matter rather less than it might, since by the time that the tools of learning have been forged, the student will be able to tackle theology for himself and will probably insist upon doing so and making sense of it. Still, it is as well to have this matter also handy and ready for the reason to work upon. At the grammatical age, therefore, we should become acquainted with the story of God and man in outline, i.e., the Old and New Testaments presented as parts of a single narrative of creation, rebellion, and redemption, and also with the Creed, the Lord's Prayer, and the Ten Commandments. At this early stage, it does not matter nearly so much that these things should be fully understood as that they should be known and remembered. And just on that note, and this is not Trivium Day, obviously, but as Raven and I were researching Trivium, all the resources that we could go to were theologically based or came from, quote, classical academies that have a theology base to them, which I found super interesting. It wasn't like a normal university, like, University at Texas where I live, right? You didn't find that stuff there unless you were specifically looking for it in a philosophy class. There maybe was some of it there, but the Trivium in general was always associated with theology in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, check it out. I think you did quite well. Quiquunque.
Okay. Well, there you go.
But look what it says.
Definition for the Latin word.
Whosoever will.
Who, whatever, no matter.
Song? Who will?
Generally,
Oh, that's interesting.
I found that this is Athanasius' creed, but this quikunx, but or quikunque, but generally it is 5 ways to prove God's existence. This is Saint Thomas Aquinas, but first 2 are from Aristotle, because Aristotle proved existence of God, and that God is intellect and mind in 2 ways, by causation and by motion. And 3 other are from Saint Thomas Aquinas, and these 5 ways to prove God is called quikunx.
Fascinating.
Nice.
Dang. All right.
Yeah.
It is difficult to say at what age precisely we should pass from the first to the second part of the trivium. Generally speaking, the answer is so soon as the pupil shows himself disposed to pertness and interminable argument. For as in the first part, the master faculties are observation and memory, so in the second, the master faculty is the discursive reason. In the first, the exercise to which the rest of the material was, and it were, keyed, was the Latin grammar. In the second, the key exercise will be formal logic. It is here that our curriculum shows its first sharp divergence from modern standards. I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
That's where the grammar stops, and then there's nothing of the trivium that children go through. The disrepute into which formal logic has fallen is entirely unjustified, and its neglect is the root cause of nearly all those disquieting symptoms which we have noted in the modern intellectual constitution. Logic has been discredited, partly because we have come to suppose that we are conditioned almost entirely by the intuitive and the unconscious. There is no time to argue whether this is true. I will simply observe that to neglect the proper training of the reason is the best possible way to make it true. Another cause for the disfavor into which logic has fallen is the belief that it is entirely based upon universal assumptions that are either unprovable or tautological. This is not true. Not all universal propositions are of this kind, but even if they were, it would make no difference, since every syllogism whose major premise is in the form all A is B can be recast in hypothetical form. Logic is the art of arguing correctly. If A, then B. The method is not invalidated by the hypothetical nature of A. Indeed, the practical utility of formal logic today lies not so much in the establishment of positive conclusions as in the prompt detection and exposure of invalid inference.
Ooh, that sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Whoever wrote this is my hero.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, it's just mind-boggling. This was 57, and look where we are. Look where we are today, 2022, right? Holy cow! It's way worse than. And she was, doing written tongue lashing. Imagine, is she even alive? I doubt she's alive.
No.
Brilliant.
Holy crap, rolling over in her grave, I'm sure, what we've become now. Okay, continuing. Let us now quickly review our material and see how it is to be related to dialectic. On the language side, we shall now have our vocabulary and morphology at our fingertips. Henceforward, we can concentrate on syntax and analysis, i.e., the logical construction of speech, and the history of language, i.e., how we came to arrange our speech as we do in order to convey our thoughts. Our reading will proceed from narrative and lyric to essays, argument, and criticism, and the pupil will learn to try his own hand at writing this kind of thing. Many lessons on whatever subject will take the form of debates, and the place of individual or choral recitation will be taken by dramatic performances with special attention to plays in which an argument is stated in dramatic form. Did anybody get this in their education?
Oh,
Anybody?
No way. I didn't get any arguments or debates or anything in my schooling at all.
Nothing.
I mean,
I can't recall.
even essays in my, getting the degrees that I have, the essays were, I thought I did fairly well, but if you really look at it, they were shit.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they just were. So, yeah.
Is he talking about like Socrates and Plato plays where you act out these debates?
Has to
type
be,
thing,
right?
Yeah, like
Yeah, it says it says many lessons, I'll read that again. Many lessons on whatever the subject will take the form of debates. So whatever the subject, it'll take the form of debates, and the place of individual or choral, that being choral, recitation, will be taken by dramatic performances with special attention to plays in which an argument is stated in dramatic form. So it has to be what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, if you just another aside, if you think about it, if you ever did have any debates or critique back and forth, whether it was in elementary school, secondary school, university, or whatever, that's where learning really occurred. When people talk to one another in the classroom, like, well, did you think of that? Well, I didn't think about that. What did you think about that?
If they did this in the form of theater with plays, I mean, what an education for the audience to see the debate played out that way.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I can't. That's brilliant stuff. Oh my God, look at I'm sorry, we are in an effed up place, man.
Mathematics, algebra, geometry, and the more advanced kinds of arithmetic will now enter into the syllabus and take its place as what it really is, not a separate quote subject, but a subdepartment of logic.
Mathematics,
Ooh.
algebra, geometry. Well,
Yes.
all of them together.
All of them together is what I read here.
Well, we have been saying that all along anyway, haven't we?
It is neither more nor less than the rule of the syllogism in its particular application to number and measurement, and should be taught as such instead of being for some a dark mystery and for others a special revelation, neither illuminating nor illuminated by any other part of knowledge.
Oh man.
Yes, no more learning equations by heart.
Mm-hmm.
Just to you have to understand them by means of logic, of course.
Yeah,
exactly.
Straight through themselves, right? They are separate and not a dark mystery.
Yes, and she said that these all are part of logic.
Mm-hmm.
So they are this logic is compound from arithmetics, mathematics, geometry, etc. So this is just logic in different actions.
It does say it is neither more nor less than the rule of the syllogism in its particular application to number
and syllogism
measurement.
is
There's no
logic.
difference. Yeah.
No difference at all.
Yeah.
Yep. Wow. Okay. History, aided by a simple system of ethics. Let me read that again. History, aided by a simple system of ethics derived from the grammar of theology, will provide much suitable material for discussion. Was the behavior of this statesman justified? What was the effect of such an enactment? What are the arguments for and against this or that form of government? We shall thus get an introduction to constitutional history, a subject meaningless to the young child, but of absorbing interest to those who are prepared to argue and debate. Theology itself will furnish material for argument about conduct and morals, and should have its scope extended by a simplified course of dogmatic theology, i.e., the rational structure of Christian thought. Clarifying the relations between the dogma and the ethics and lending itself to that application of ethical principles, in particular instances, which is properly called causatory. No, oh, here's another good word you're going to have to look up. Casuistry. I don't know. Before we go on further, by the way, guys, this is how I read books. If you guys don't, any word I don't know, I immediately go look up.
What is that? Causatory, you said?
It's not cause, like it's not CAU, it's CASUIS. Yep. CASUISTRY. Let me know who gets it first.
Specious or excessively subtle reasoning intended to rationalize or mislead.
Ooh.
The determination of right and wrong in questions of conduct or conscience by analyzing cases that illustrate general ethical rules.
How do you pronounce it, Bev? How's it pronounced?
Casuistry.
I understand. Casuistic. It means that you are studying cases.
Okay, I have a real old dictionary here. Just let me read the definition. The determination of right and wrong in questions of conduct or conscience by the application of general principles of ethics.
Okay.
It says here, casuistry is a process of reasoning that seeks to resolve moral problems by extracting or extending theoretical rules from a particular case and reapplying those rules to new instances. Sort of like, I would say, like law, where they take one case and apply it to another.
Yes, that's in juridical terms. It is commonly known that, and in ancient times, it was how lawyers were learning from cases, how to resolve cases and how to applicate morals and laws into cases, and how to derive moral from the case.
Okay. So just to backtrack a bit, the writer is saying that clarifying the relations between the dogma and the ethics and lending itself to that application of ethical principles in particular instances, which is properly called that word. Okay. Geography and the sciences will likewise provide material for dialectic. So these are all subjects to get into dialectic. It's not subjects in and of themselves. It's subjects to get the pupil into dialectic.
Yeah, through the logic and the reasoning and the argumentation.
Yeah. It's pronounced casuistry.
Casuistry.
Yeah.
Never ever heard that word before. Okay, very good.
Neither have I.
But above all, we must not neglect the material which is so abundant in the pupil's own daily life. There is a delightful passage in Leslie Paul's The Living Hedge, which tells how a number of small boys enjoyed themselves for days arguing about an extraordinary shower of rain which had fallen in their town, a shower so localized that it left one half of the main street wet and the other dry. Could one, they argue, properly say that it had rained that day, on or over the town, or only in the town? How many drops of water were required to constitute rain, and so on? Argument about this led on to a host of similar problems about rest and motion, sleep and waking, est and non est, and the infinitesimal division of time. The whole passage is an admirable example of the spontaneous development of the ratiocinative. Whoa, that's a word. Jeez. Faculty, for those of you who are playing along, ratiocinative. I imagine that's how it's pronounced. RATIOCINATIVE. And this is only 57, guys. Jeez. A ratiocinative faculty and the natural and proper thirst of the awakening reason for the definition of terms and exactness of statement. All events are food for such an appetite. An umpire's decision, the degree to which one may transgress the spirit of a regulation without being trapped by the letter on such questions as these, children are born casuists, and their natural propensity only needs to be developed and trained, and especially brought into an intelligible relationship with the events in the grown-up world. The newspapers are full of good material for such exercises. I don't know that that's true anymore.
I don't think so, yes. It was maybe in that times.
Mm-hmm. Yep, go ahead.
Ratiocination, right, is the mental process of passing from the cognition of the premises to the cognition of the conclusion. Reasoning. It says a mental product, an object consisting of premises and a conclusion drawn from them, inference and argumentation. So that ratiocination is just the process of logic, right? Being able to reason one thing from something else. And that Kazuiton or whatever is being able to relate one case to another. It's just all of that linking, being able to link all of these things together. So learning a practice of logic within one thing means you can apply it to other cases. You can directly relate these things to other things.
You're spot on, Bev, because in my dictionary it says to reason methodically and logically. Exactly what you said.
So those words that are hidden in there have a very distinct meaning, but we didn't know any of them.
Nope.
They're the two words that we didn't have a clue about, and they're the two words that you have to have an understanding of to understand what she's talking about. I mean, how clever is that? In 50, 70 years, they've took these words away that we don't even know what they mean anymore. And that's her whole case is based around those two things. In the mind of a child, and how formative and how you could get to link. This is amazing, isn't it?
It is amazing. Absolutely. Okay, carrying on. The newspapers are full of good material for such exercises. Again, I don't know that that's true anymore. Legal decisions, on the one hand, in cases where the cause at issue is not too abstruse. On the other, fallacious reasoning and muddle-headed arguments, with which the correspondence columns of certain papers one could name are abundantly stocked. I think Dear Abby is probably one that you might say, those kinds of things. Wherever the matter of dialectic is found, it is, of course, highly important that attention should be focused upon the beauty and economy of a fine demonstration or a well-turned argument, lest veneration should wholly die. Criticism must not be merely destructive. Let me say that again. Criticism must not be merely destructive. Though at the same time, both teacher and pupils must be ready to detect fallacy, slipshod reasoning, ambiguity, irrelevance, and redundancy, and to pounce upon them like rats. This is the moment when precise writing may be usefully undertaken, together with such exercises as the writing of an essay and the reduction of it when written by 25 or 50%. It will doubtless be objected that to encourage young persons at the pert age to browbeat, correct, or argue with their elders will render them perfectly intolerable. My answer is that children of that age are intolerable anyhow, and that their natural argumentativeness may just as well be canalized to good purpose as to allow it to run away into the sands. It may indeed be rather less obtrusive at home if it is disciplined in school. And anyhow, elders who have abandoned the wholesome principle that children should be seen and not heard have no one to blame for them but themselves. Anybody want to take a guess as to what happens to kids today that are in that pert age? What happens to them in school? When they're constantly argumentative, when they're unruly, when they're, you know how kids are when they get to be, 8, 9, 10, 12.
Teacher is calling for parents because of bad behavior of their child.
Yep. Or sending them to the principal's office or giving them detention or whatever. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Or putting them on medication for ADHD.
Oh, boom. Yeah. Boom. There you go.
Can I just give you a canalized?
Yes, please.
It's got a couple. The civil engineering one is to provide with a convert or into a canal or canals.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The other one is to give a particular direction to or provide an outlet for.
There you go.
That's where she was talking about the canalized.
Giving them an outlet.
Yeah, for their argumentativeness.
Yep. Exactly.
And one note about redundant things. For example, perpendicular at a point. This at a point is redundant, but it is misleading.
Yep.
So Globbers, they are using for some purpose this word at a point, which is nonsense. It is soletism, so-called. But this is redundant. She was talking about why adding redundant things for propaganda purposes.
I'll read the next paragraph, Bev, and then you can pick it up from there. Once again, the contents of the syllabus at this stage may be anything you like. The subjects supply material, but they are all to be regarded as mere grist for the mental mill to work upon. The pupils should be encouraged to go and forage for their own information and so guided towards the proper use of libraries and books for reference and shown how to tell which sources are authoritative and which are not.
Towards the close of this stage, the pupils will probably beginning to discover for themselves that their knowledge and experience are insufficient, and that their trained intelligences need a great deal more material to chew upon. The imagination, usually dormant during the pert age, will reawaken and prompt them to suspect the limitations of logic and reason. This means that they are passing into the poetic age and are ready to embark on the study of rhetoric. The doors of the storehouse of knowledge should now be thrown open for them to browse about as they will. The things once learned by rote will now seen in new contexts. The things once coldly analysed can now be brought together to form new synthesis. Here and there a sudden insight will bring about that the most exciting of all discoveries, the realization that truism is true. That's been taken away. Oh, we're not having any of that.
Skepticism, new skepticism.
It is difficult to map out any general syllabus for the study of rhetoric. A certain freedom is demanded. In literature, appreciation should be again allowed to take the lead over destructive criticism, and self-expression in writing can go forward, with its tools now sharpened. to cut clean and observe proportion. Any child who already shows a disposition to specialize should be given his head. For when the use of the tools has been well and truly learned, it is available for any study whatsoever. It would be well, I think, that each pupil should learn to do 1 or 2 subjects really well, while taking a few classes in subsidiary subjects, as to keep the mind open to the interrelations of all knowledge. Indeed, at this stage, our difficulty will be to keep the subjects apart, for dialectic will have shown all branches of learning to be interrelated. So rhetoric will tend to show that all knowledge is one. To show this, and show why it is so, is preeminently the task of the mistress science. To show, but whether theology is studied or not, we should at least insist that the children who seem inclined to specialize on the mathematical and scientific side should be obliged to attend some lessons in the humanities and vice versa. At this stage also, the Latin grammar, having done its work, may be dropped for those who prefer to carry on their language studies on the modern side. Those who are likely to never have the great use or aptitude for mathematics might also be allowed to rest more or less upon their oars. Generally speaking, whatsoever is mere apparatus may now be allowed to fall into the background, while the trained mind is gradually prepared for specialization in the subject which, when the trivium is completed, it should be perfectly well equipped to tackle on its own. The final synthesis of the trivium, the presentation and public defense of the thesis, should be restored in some form, perhaps as a kind of leaving examination during the last term of school. The scope of rhetoric depends also on whether the pupil is to be turned out into the world at the age of 16, whether he is proceeded to the university, since really rhetoric should be taken at about 14. The first category of the pupil should study grammar from about 9 to 11 and dialectic from 12 to 14. His last 2 school years would then be devoted to rhetoric, which in this case would be the fairly specialized and vocational kind, suiting him to enter immediately upon some practical career. A pupil of the second category would finish his dialectical course in the preparatory school and take rhetoric during his first 2 years at public school. At 16, he would be ready to start upon these subjects, which are proposed for his later study at the university, and this part of his education will correspond with the medieval quadrivium. What this amounts to is the ordinary pupil whose formal education ends at 16 will take the trivium only, whereas scholars will take both the trivium and the quadrivium. Wow. All the way up to 16. Is the trivium then a sufficient education for life? Properly taught, I believe that it should be. At the end of the dialectic, the children will probably be seen to be far behind their coevals, brought up on old-fashioned modern methods, so far as detailed knowledge of specific subjects is concerned. But after the age of 14, they should be able to overhaul the others hand over fist. Indeed, I am not all that sure that a pupil thoroughly proficient in the trivium would not be fit to proceed immediately to the university at the age of 16, thus proving himself at the equal of his medieval counterpart, whose precocity astonished us at the beginning of this discussion. This, to be sure, would make hay of the English public school system and disconcert the universities very much. It would, for example, make quite a different thing of the Oxford and Cambridge boat race. But I am not here to consider the feelings of academic bodies. I am concerned only with the proper training of the mind to encounter and deal with the formidable mass of undigested problems presented to it by the modern world. For the tools of learning are the same in any and every subject, and the person who knows how to use them will, at any age, get a mastery of the new subject in half the time and with a quarter of the effort expended by the person who has not the tools at his command. To learn 6 subjects without remembering how they were learnt does nothing to ease the approach to a 7th, and have learnt to remember the art of learning makes the approach to every subject an open door. Before concluding these necessarily very sketchy suggestions, I ought to say why I think it necessary, in these days, to go back to a discipline which we had discarded. The truth is that for the last 300 years or so, we have been living upon our educational capital. The post-Renaissance world, bewildered and excited by a profusion of new subjects offered to it, broke away from the old discipline, which had indeed become sadly dull and stereotyped in its practical application, and imagined that henceforward it could, as it were, disport itself happily in its new and extended quadrivium without passing through the trivium. But the scholastic tradition, though broken and maimed, still lingered in the public schools and universities. Milton, however much he protested against it, was formed by it. The debate of the fallen angels and the disputation of Abdiel with Satan have the tool marks of the schools upon them, and might, incidentally, profitably figure as a set of passages for our dialectical studies. Right down to the 19th century, our public affairs were mostly managed, and our books and journals were for the most part written by people brought up in homes and trained in places where the tradition was still alive in the memory and almost in the blood. Just so, many people today who are atheist and agnostic in religion are governed in their conduct by a code of Christian ethics which is so rooted that it never occurs to them to question it. But one cannot.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And actually, there was a group of people that I listened to. I can't remember now, but that talked about that fact, that where do morals come from if you find that an atheist or an agnostic is actually a good person, or for that matter, any other religion or non-religion that you want, right? Someone that doesn't adhere to Christianity, quote unquote. Where do morals come from if they don't have something that they can grab? What makes them good? What makes them decent people?
Yeah,
that's
Christian
a really good
ethics.
Yeah, whether they know it as that or not, right?
Yeah, well, that's the sort of thing that we've been doing, right? We're pointing out things that people perhaps don't realise that are right in front of them and have been all along. It's
all
some
people
uncomfortable
have
truths.
Conscience, so this
Yep.
is common thing with us, atheist or agnostic, whatever.
Right.
But if he is not going deliberately against his conscience, so you can say that he should know what is good and what is wrong.
I just on that note, something else because she mentions the Renaissance period. I wonder what she would say. Did we lose this process of learning during the Renaissance or after the Renaissance? I mean, of course, none of us were there. We can't know for sure, and we don't even know if what we've been told about the Renaissance is true or not. But it's an intriguing question to know: did the Renaissance have something to do with losing this process of learning, or was it afterwards that it happened?
It was a long process, but generally I would say that the education was destroyed by French Freemasons called encyclopedists. So they introduced layman school, so laity. So not religious education, but lay education. They called it lay education. We have to free people from superstition, and they wrote encyclopedia, a French encyclopedia, and we have now this lay education. This is origins of that is in France in 18th century.
So post Napoleonic or pre-Napoleonic?
Before French Revolution.
Okay, interesting. So that's 1700s ish.
18th, the age of light.
Okay.
Illuminati.
So 1800s. We've talked about some fishy shit happening in the 1800s anyway.
Yes. So it was the age of light, so to speak. Age of light. Illuminati, French, not only French, but Freemasons, encyclopedia, getting out of religion, and so on. So,
right.
We ready to go on? There's only two paragraphs left.
Yep.
But one cannot live on capital forever. However firmly a tradition is rooted, if it is never watered through, it dies hard. Yet in the end, it dies. And today a great number, perhaps the majority, of the men and women who handle our affairs, write our books and our newspapers, carry out our research, present our plays and our films, speak from our platforms and pulpits, yes, and who educate our young people, have never, even in a lingering traditional memory, undergone the scholastic discipline. Less and less do the children who come up to be educated bring any of that tradition with them. We have lost the tools of learning, the axe and the wedge, the hammer and the saw, the chisel and the plane, that were so adaptable to all tasks. Instead of them, we have merely a set of complicated jigs, each of which will do but one task and no more, and in using which eye and hand receiving no training, so that no man ever sees the work as a whole or looks to the end of the work. What use is it to pile task on task and prolonging the days of labour, if at the close of the chief object is left unattained? It is not the fault of the teachers. They work only too hard already. The combined folly of a civilization that has forgotten its own roots is forcing them to shore up the tottering weight of an educational structure that is built upon sand. They are doing for their pupils the work which the pupils themselves ought to do. For the sole true end of education is simply this: to teach men how to learn for themselves, and whatever instruction fails to do this is an effort spent in vain. The end. Thank you.
I am absolutely in love with that woman.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think the story of this is that there is a book that's like a little pamphlet that comes before it. She wrote a book, The Mind of the Maker. Now, in that, she was just laying out a case, an argument for whatever, right? But the people, when they read that, they misconstrued. They took it the wrong way. They started arguing against her. They didn't understand what she was doing when she wrote it. And so in order for her to explain, she wrote that beginning bit, because she was sensing that people were criticizing for no reason. They weren't making valuable criticisms. They were just destructive. They were misrepresenting. They weren't understanding the argument. They were changing the terms that she was using within the argument. So, I mean, that is just a reactionary thing that perfectly sums up everything.
Yeah, absolutely. But to be clear, Bev, I think, are you right? Am I right in saying that her writing this pamphlet or whatever, the foreword to The Mind of the Maker, the book that she was because she sensed that these people had not learned, they themselves lost that learning process. They weren't educated correctly, and therefore the criticisms to her book were unjustified. Is that?
I don't think they're unjustified. She sensed that there was a forward needed to it, so you understand. Because if you don't have that understanding, what she's talking about there, that the formal understanding to realize where she's coming from in the next part in the other book, then you might get misconstrued. You may take the wrong idea, and because, like we say, this logic part doesn't really bring emotion in, and I think that's where she's going. Like she sensed the emotion and not the intellect, that the discussion that was meant to be coming from the book.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I've only just got this, so I just imagine that's where she's going with this, because it's wrote brilliantly, and it's as though she knew what was coming, even back in that day in the 50s. Obviously, that time where she was writing that's when cognitive dissonance was being found.
So
there's a thing that's occurring within the minds of people, and a development of a model that's come. It's just after Einstein, isn't it?
Yep.
There's within the schooling system. I think she could see it, but that is a proper tongue lashing that she got.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
That was a proper tongue lashing. Absolutely. Sugar in the live chat, Sugar Cookie says, sounds like she was describing the origins of Idiocracy. Yeah, for those who don't know, that's a movie. Yeah, I totally believe that she was describing that. Probably seeing parts of it in 57. Look where we are now.
Yeah, it's been brushed under the carpet, hasn't it? Completely, all the time. And I think we can see it more and more now. It's plainly obvious to anybody that's been around here that this particular type of learning I'm 50 odd myself now, and I'd say that this is still applicable, right? The trivium and understanding of this sort of learning process, it still works. It's as eye-opening as it would be to a child. I think even more so at a later date, to be able to go back and revise it all, and to have the humility to be able to do that as an adult and go back to this. I think it's quite hard.
It is very hard
to do that sort of a thing.
And I'll say this, shout out to Raven, because he's, at least for me anyway, he's the one who brought this whole idea and said that he wanted this for his children and grandchildren.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, for where we are today, seems no one heeded this person's suggestions. And I think if she were alive, she probably would have thought to write a warning if we didn't heed her suggestions, because we haven't, and we see where we are today. It's as dystopian as anyone could imagine dystopian getting.
I wonder what brought her to start seeing this. And I don't know how old she was when she wrote the book or the story, but I wonder what brought this to her attention, because she grasped it so well, perfectly.
I know. I don't know, but I'm going to start looking into her.
Yeah.
It's. Did you say who it was, Bev? It's Dorothy Sayers.
Yes, Dorothy Sayers. Yes.
Yeah.
She was probably sent here to give us that warning, and nobody listened.
Mm-hmm. Definitely nobody listened. Yeah. I guess it's just, what do we do with it now? I mean, this little group of people, what do we do with it? Certainly, take it upon ourselves, which we've been doing.
A couple million copies of that and start handing them out.
Right.
Oh, it's got it here as well at the back in the appendix. The Apostles' Creed.
Mm-hmm.
The Nicene Creed.
Creed, yep.
Quick-and-Qui Vault. Do you want us to start off a bit? The Catholic faith is this: that we worship one God in Trinity, and Trinity in unity, neither confounding the persons nor dividing the substance. Ooh, it's quite a big one, that.
Oh yeah. Yep.
There is one person, the Father, another the Son, and another the Holy Ghost. Yeah.
Yeah, this is stuff that personally I did grow up in the Roman Catholic faith, so this is all stuff that I've obviously knew and probably forgotten a lot of it.
This is pure logical inference in that. I advise to read first chapters of Summa contra Gentiles. It is a summary against Gentiles of Saint Thomas Aquinas. He is just repeating Aristotle's proof, and he is dealing about the substance and Trinity in general, and what kind of substance we are dealing with, and so on. So full philosophical and logical explanation for how deity works in the Catholic faith, so to speak.
Yeah.
First, when I read it, I was not prepared, so I had to learn in logic very, very, very fast, because I couldn't understand many of things there. But now I think I'm better in that. But this was common bread for educated people in medieval times. So now we are in that phase. I think that many people could not understand what was written there then. But going back to trivium, if someone has trivium in his mind, he would comprehend this philosophical treatise and works at that time written. So I strongly recommend to try to understand what, for example, Saint Thomas Aquinas said, because, for example, I was reading first chapters for like 3 months before I understood what he was writing about.
So this blew many of us away. I, for one, John's chimed in, Bev, Paper, I think all agree, Saragaki's chimed in. I mean, this is very, very important stuff, I think. But interestingly enough, looking at her Wikipedia entry, I haven't seen one thing yet about this. I haven't seen the work yet.
Yeah, I'm looking through it now. I read 57, but it looks like she died in 57.
Yeah, she died in 57.
Possibly be out when she died, like
December
57 is when she died.
it's
So
all
it
like
says
crime and comedy.
Yep.
What was the published date on that? Is there one?
No.
Because it could have been written, years prior. It could have just been sitting in her desk or something. You never know. Yeah, that is strange.
Yeah, there's no copyright on that. And there's no listing of it that I can find yet.
Sayers' religious book, The Mind of the Maker, 1941.
41. Okay.
Yeah.
So whoa, we're at World War II.
But that's not
time
this,
frame.
The Lost Tools.
Yeah, I don't see that when that was written, whether it was before or after The Mind of the Maker.
Oh, there's a red bit there as well. Creed or Chaos is a
Creed or Chaos. Yeah.
restate. That's gone, hasn't it? That's not there. It means it no longer exists on Wiki.
Page does not exist.
Mm.
We may need to look into that.
Wonder why that's gone.
Well, here's what Creed or Chaos is: a restatement of basic historical Christian doctrine based on the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, and the Athanasian Creed. Similar to but somewhat more densely written than C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. Both sought to explain the central doctrines of Christianity clearly and concisely to those simplified, right, Ben?
Yeah.
Doctrines of Christianity clearly and concisely to those who had encountered them in distorted or watered down forms, on the grounds that if you're going to criticize something, you had best know what it is first.
Oh, that's brilliant, isn't it? And then here we go.
Sure
Look,
is.
read the next paragraph here.
Yeah. Her influential essay, The Lost Tools of Learning, has been used by many scholars in the U.S. as a basis for the classical education movement, reviving the medieval trivium subjects, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, as tools to enable the analysis and mastery of every other subject. Sayers, who also wrote 3 volumes of commentaries about Dante, religious essays, and several plays, of which The Man Born to be King may be best known.
Wow. He's done a lot of stuff.
Yeah. She was British.
Yeah.
The religious work of Sayers did so well at presenting the Orthodox Anglican position that in 1943 the Archbishop of Canterbury, William Temple, offered her a Lambeth doctorate in divinity, which she declined. Whew, that tells you something. Explaining that I have only served divinity, as it were, accidentally, coming to it as a writer rather than as a Christian person. Wow.
That's nice.
Encourage
like
women to read that, because on this panel we are only men, or mostly men, not women. But as you can see, there were, and I think there are very wise women who can discuss logic.
Definitely. Who would you rather have, her or Foucault?
Her, of course.
Of course, right? If people don't know who Foucault is, you have to go look. You have to go down that rabbit hole yourself.
Wow, some of that stuff for women's rights and all of that. That's all pretty good stuff. It's like she fell into everything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. And a remarkable woman.
But known for detective stories.
Yeah.
That's a plaque Where is that? Where's that plaque on her childhood home or something? I don't know.
Every time I'm going to say something, you open your mouth.
Oh, were you going to say that? Sorry, John.
I wanted to thank you guys for bringing this forward, man. This was awesome. It really was. Thank you.
It just fits with what we're doing.
Really. Yeah, did this fall on into your lap, Bev, or did somebody bring it to us? It wasn't Buster again, was it? Because I'm tired of giving him all the credit for everything all the time.
I think somebody must have given me at some point. I was going through old bookmarks that I had somewhere, and this just happened to be there. And I just thought I'm buying that. Bought the book.
This is so good.
But for the learning, I think, because what obviously is necessary for us to do is to take this principles of the trivium. Thanks Raven, because it's not just for us. This is obviously what's needed for people to be able to keep their faculties together in this changing world that she was talking about. Advertisements and stuff that you're being led, you took all over the place, and most people again say words that they don't know what the meanings of them are. They don't understand the grammar of most of this stuff, and it's really hard for them to formulate these logical arguments, just to put the words together in a coherent string of that makes sense. I mean, it's difficult for all of us to be able to do it, and to be able to speak that fluently whilst in the middle of a conversation, to be able to use your wits. It's Definitely. A valuable tool for every one of us to have. Me personally, I've learned everything that I'm doing right now with the people that are around us doing this very thing. I think it's brilliant. And this, the trivium and the way that we will be going forward with advanced simplicity. This is definitely the way that we're going to be going. We're moving away from this ridiculous, let's call it advertising. But, because that's what the models are. People are advertising this stuff, and it depends whether you're buying it or not. We're very particular people around here. I think that's where we're going to have to be going. And we're learning the art of debate, learning the art of discussion, how to talk to each other. Or if you want to come round and have a discussion, Next Level Discord. That's what we're here for. We're going nowhere.
We are going nowhere. We're staying right here. Y'all come on. Or maybe you're too afraid of this kind of stuff. Might be too afraid.
Challenging. That's what it is. It's too definitely challenging to be able to talk about this sort of stuff.
Scares the crap out of me.
I think that particular book, I don't know how many strong women there are like that. I'm thinking now, back in the 50s, my grandma and all of that, in the prime, I can imagine how feisty they were. Can you imagine seeing this woman where, I don't know, she's a writer. She's writing novels and stuff. To be able to think so deeply about this language, studying languages and stuff. She obviously went into religion, but it sounds like she went into religion to be able to learn the discussion. Sounds to me like that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Think of how strong-willed women had to be back then to go through the Great Depression, World War II, you know, all the changes that they went through.
I'll tell you, my grandmother on my mother's side, that woman literally scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was
My wife had
strong.
my wife had a grandmother that lived to be 98. Still drove, still rode a bicycle, owned her own business. Like, we would go over to visit, and if she said the visit was from 1 to 3, at 3 o'clock, you best be getting out, or she's kicking you out.
Yeah, amazing woman.
Yeah.
I'll be looking for more from her.
Back in the day, people were learned discipline, and it involved also autodiscipline. So, for example, my father was that kind of person, and he taught me how to be disciplinized. So, to know my own duty, what I have to do, not what I want to do, or what I please to do, but what I ought to do.
By you mean self-disciplined? Auto-disciplined.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Just for the YouTube, if they can't read the chat, Saragaki said, when it comes to the passage of being bombarded with words without the means to defend against them, there's a guy named Marshall McLuhan. I know I've heard of this guy. I've probably read some of him. From around the same period of this lady, who focused hard on this idea of how modern media, quote, the written word shapes entire civilizations consuming said media. Slightly more specialized subject, of course, but definitely on this same note she was mentioning. Marshall McLuhan, McLuhan. For those of us in the Discord, Saragaki put a link to the Wikipedia.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, we'll bung that in the
trivium.
Yeah, well, the trivium or what? Yeah, it's all up for discussion now, isn't it? Obviously.
Oh yeah.
For that lady's taught us now that the dialectic and stuff, everything can be discussed. The merits of all of this sort of stuff. So that's obviously where we're going to be going, and that's logic. So, yeah, this is going to be good. Logic, trivium, and geometry. Try and link all the three of them together, and we'll break up the ends of the weeks with the Model Friction Monday and Free for All Fridays. These obviously, there's not so many people come watching these shows of the midweek shows. More about learning. You see the benefits of it on the Mondays and Fridays, but this is where we learn the tools of our trade. The tools of our trade being talking to people. We are trying to have some discussions with people. It's proving a little bit tricky because obviously there are a few people that give us a bad name. I don't know why. Perhaps they don't want us talking to other people. They want to keep us confined within something. It's quite obvious who these people are. Everybody in the YouTube chat will know. When they see the text chat trolls, they know who they are. Negative people.
I would say the scared people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what they're coming for. I mean, he's actually coming here to tell us that we don't have an argument. But, I mean, does he have an argument? No.
Nope.
Comes with no argument to tell us that we don't have an argument.
Yeah, they're just making sure the boogeyman is where they thought that the boogeyman was. That's right. We're just here. Don't worry. We're not under your bed or in your closet. It's all safe. You can go sleepy by now. Mm-hmm. It's all good.
He imagines that we're me. You guys seem to be safe, but I give myself a bad name somehow. It says a text chat troll. Must have some really good upstanding in his community.
These text chat trolls, they are bringing us received opinions, and they call it argument. And even they are not able to defend this received opinion.
Has no argument. But I mean, Chaiki, if any of you get the balls to make an argument, bring it over here. You know where we are. Or just let us know where you're going to be. Let us know that you've definitely got an argument first, though. Because non-arguments, there's nothing worse than having a discussion with a non-argument.
They don't even know how to define the terms, Bev, so I wouldn't hold your breath on that.
No. The identity of the subject is where it normally ends.
Yeah.
Yes, constantly going off topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, we are up for discussion and argument. Like Paper said, we'd love to see a debate. We might even get involved in it as long as there's a decent opponent with a real debate. I'm sure there's plenty of people here that would like to try that sort of thing. Test their hand at it to see how well people would be in this structured environment of a real debate.
If people don't know what debate is, I strongly recommend, as example, this Dr. Sangenis versus Dr. White. You cannot have to be very interested in these religious topics, but just to perceive how real debate works. It will take, for example, 3 hours, maybe kind of boring, but you will see how it works. Debate in real life.
Yeah, they're normally around religion, aren't they?
Yes, but as example, it may be anything. I just from my experience, I know these, and I watched few of them, but it can be anything. I just can recommend what I watched, but maybe there are some more very interesting debates, real debates. But just to know how it works, that this is proposition and thesis and defending thesis and attacking thesis. One side is on defense, one like in court of justice. It is the same as in court of justice, but without judge. Judge is maybe audience, but it works like in court of justice. Or better to say, it should work that way.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's never going to happen anyway, is it? Like, let's face it. There is no opposition that could even attempt to put an identity to a subject that they wanted to talk about. We know that the new debate arena has been structured specifically to end up with this shouting and arguing, to make ridicule of other people, precisely to not debate.
Yes. Instead of debate, of offending people, shouting and distracting, red herring, all kind of fallacies and heuristic tricks of Arthur Schopenhauer. everybody can type Schopenhauer in wiki, and you will have a list of 30 heuristic tricks of Arthur Schopenhauer, and this is what we are experiencing while quote unquote debating, for example, Globers. So they are using these tricks, which are better to learn them by heart, because I can always spot these tricks in discussions with people like Brenda or whatever, or skeptics or whatever.
Have they sent a lone text chat troll? That's the best they can muster. Wow.
It's like, go over there.
Now,
go over there. Yeah. Go over there. Say something to them. What do we do? They're talking about learning and the process of learning. What the freak are we going to do now? Don't worry about it. Just go over there. Say something. Anything. Doesn't matter.
Send one of our most experienced text chat trolls over there.
Oh, goodness.
Call him dumb.
Yeah.
Jake's trying to tell us he's got a modus tollens somewhere, right? And we've got to go and find it. It's on the internet somewhere. He can't just type it out again so we can all have a look at it.
There you go. The hubris. Asking, compared to you guys, I am a genius. The hubris, right? We're all sitting here going, I have no idea what that word is. And somebody look up that word. I can't believe we're like going through all these words. All of us are going, yeah, we suck at this stuff. We need to figure this stuff out. Meanwhile, the hubris guys are like, we know everything. We're geniuses.
They already knew that.
Yeah.
They already knew about the reasoning and of logic, where they can't even touch logic. They don't even know what it is. If they smell it, they go running.
Exactly. They don't know what it is. It's the boogeyman that hides under the bed, like I said. That's what it is. They're terrified.
Logic reveals truth, so trollers have to run away.
Yep.
Because they have to run away from truth.
Exactly.
Because truth is not their goal.
It's like a refining fire, isn't it, Paper?
Yes.
Yeah.
They can't have proofs. They can't have truths. And that's why the best they can muster is Jake.
They don't have logic. They can't define terms.
And now he wrote a comment in one of the videos.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. He's left his modus tollens there. Like, he doesn't know
good.
where he's left it. Like, yeah, you go and find it for us. Dude, I've lost my car. I don't know where it is.
I misplaced my keys. Where was that modus tollens I had? I think I've left them in my other trousers.
I can't even remember what it was. I can't retype it out again. It's far too much.
Oh, dear.
It's a modus tollens, Jake. Come on.
Modus tollens is the nice guy.
He's now saying he presented his proof, which is that picture. It's the picture that I think that started Chad off with his eye level series of artwork. It was Chaiki that started all of that off with that one picture. People just drawing lines on pictures that other people take.
By the way, for Chaiki's note, modus tollens is disproof, not proof. This is disproof.
That would be the other guy, Ponens, his brother.
Yeah.
Modus ponens, not tollens.
That's not a Chike, that's not a modus tollens.
Oh my gosh.
That's a picture somebody else took that you drew a line on. If that's the best you've got, Chike, then hey, go and present it. Go and stash it away with all of the globe proofs that you keep over there.
Yes. Yeah, put it right next to the geometric ones. Those are the really good ones.
Put it in the vault of Ranty and the pictures you found on the internet.
Yeah, counting pixels.
We're talking about logic, Chikey, and it's not logical anything that you do. Like, none of that you say has any logical basis behind it at all. It's got nothing. And it's embarrassing, I would say, if that's the best. But when we know that. I mean, this is Logic Night. We've known for, well, I don't know, 6-7 months now.
Yep.
That Logic defeats Globers. It just keeps them away.
It's like garlic to a vampire.
Mm-hmm. I think it was the separation of us from whatever crowd that anybody thought we were in. It's like the anti-globe sort of stuff. Logic. Like garlic to a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
Show logic to a glober. They'll have to deny it.
Yeah, Mike Jones has been doing it to Wally for the last 4 or 5 days at least with the Erie Canal. Just shake my head.
Well, that all came from the Blue Marble elevation profiles.
Yep.
And from the Lake Rakia Causeway and LIGO. You just keep flipping between the two. Rakia drives past them. He depends which one he's driving past. It's like, what should we be doing today? Oh, Lake Rakia. Okay, where's that hump? I want which pick. Everyone can see what you're afraid of. Go on, show the picture. Show he picture so everyone can see it. Which one? Okay, let me show. I think it's the Welcome to the Globe picture he's going on about. Let me find it.
Yeah, that's the picture with the globe logic all over it, Bev. That one.
This one. This is the Blue Marble science. You know, inverted commas science. Blue Marble science. Elevation profiles. This one. Welcome to the globe. Let me get rid of that. It's in the way, the next level logo. I'll have to get rid of it. Or I underlined it. That one, Chikey. The Blue Marble elevation profile of a horizontal line. Where he says, welcome to the globe. And if that doesn't look like an elevation profile of a horizontal line, it's because you've not accepted the globe. Accept the globe, and then that's what elevation profiles of horizontal lines look like.
Oh, apparently it's not that. It's some other picture.
Oh, wait a minute. It'll be the other one, won't it? The other elevation profile. He doesn't say welcome to the globe, but...
The thanks Bev picture. That's what he's saying.
You know, you can imagine that this blue line can be drawn on spherical surface, and then it would appear to be straight line, maybe.
There you go. That one there, that's the other one. The other blue marble elevation profile. Is that the one, Chaiki? The one with the elevation above the tangent plane. The internal tangent plane. Of Lake Rakia Causeway. It was good. It was nice of blue marble to label it like that.
Bit difficult to see with the black background, but
come on, Chaiki, write your proof out. Let's see it. A picture isn't a proof. You definitely know that a picture is not what constitutes as a proof. Chaik, that's ridiculous. He does realise that a picture's 2D, doesn't he?
Are you sure?
Well, I think he's trying to say that the 2D picture extends out with a 3-dimensional line, opposing the 2D-ness of the picture. Maybe, I don't know.
It is a prof indeed.
Yeah.
It's definitely
it's
a prof.
Oh, yes.
For sure.
Definitely prof. It is a prof indeed.
Look at the desperation. My goodness. Just show the picture.
This is blue marble elevation profiles. These are the welcome to the globe. Come and join us on the globe with the elevation profiles of horizontal lines. The blue one is the horizontal line. The 1, 2, 3, 4 lines there represent one horizontal line in reality. Only on a globe model, though.
Yeah, I think Chaiki's a little upset with you, Bev.
Mm-hmm. Global logic.
Globgic. That's Betty's been teaching him. Betty's the globe logic master. But, I mean, he failed dismally against Saragaki last Tuesday. It's nearly a week since, well, it is.
It is a week.
It is a week, yeah. I've noticed he's not come round again.
Since that embarrassment.
Have a look, yeah.
Yeah.
We've not even had a chance to go over that. Saragaki's been a little bit ill, so we will have to remember to go over that.
Definitely. As soon as Saragaki's feeling better. Yeah, we definitely need to go over it.
We prevented Baby to go over with half an hour of lecture about cats and fish lovers.
And mammals.
Mammals, yes.
Mammals, yeah.
And I think as well, I don't know, Emma's not quite got a PC around, but it definitely needs Emma to read some of the most pertinent statements within that book or that pamphlet need to be read by Emma, I think.
Yeah. We may need to start our Thursday or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday shows with that snippet of where she talked about not standing a chance on the written word, no defense at all. Yeah. Just that paragraph.
Yes.
Just start it out as a reminder when certain people come to visit.
Yeah, that we arm them with the tools of correct usage of words.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That way, people like Chaik are completely disarmed by their own. It's hard to call it an argument spotting the fallacies within there. Because I mean, that would be it, wouldn't it? You'd never actually get to the argument because you'd be forever picking fallacies.
Definitely chasing your tail. Is it any wonder? That's what it seems. Chasing the tail. How often have we said it, Bev? Going around and around and around and around and around and around in the same circle over and over and over and over and over again.
I did have some. I don't know what these were. Some big conversations. Oh, hey, yeah, check this one out. This is a Harry Callahan, is it?
Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
Harry Callahan.
He says, I still don't get that drop hump issue. How can you not understand whether it is one or the other is determined just by observer's orientation in relation to his vertical? Right?
So he's assuming globe, and he's assuming that verticals are not perpendicular. Parallel.
On paper. Right? This is a paper thing, not in reality.
Of course.
Yeah.
But he's assuming that, and you don't understand the model.
Yeah. But he says, like, he goes on to explain himself. He says, when we draw your example with two boats starting at the top of the water ball. So, like, he's already... he's talking about the top of the ball. Well, that's right. It is the top of the ball. There will be a point where part of the curve... Let me start that again. It gets a little bit complicated, doesn't it? When we draw your example... What? I've never drawn a ball as an example. So I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know who he's talking about. You will be able to see that I've never done that. Water levels are tools that establish horizontal. They try and say this. When we draw your example, his example, with two boats starting at the top of the water ball floating away from each other, there will be a point where part of the curve of that ball will obscure view of the other boat. I think we all agree on that. No, I don't agree on that because that's ridiculous. Boats don't do that. Boats don't float on water balls. You're talking about on top of a ball. Boats don't go on that. Says you could keep observer's orientation still the same from the top to the new faraway location. You keep them vertical relative to the paper you drew them on. Then they could call that curvature of the part of the ball hump. But that is not their vertical. Vertical for them is parallel to the radial line in the spot where they are standing, or where is their boat. Does that make any sense? Parallel. A vertical for them is parallel to the radial line in the spot where they are standing. I mean, it's a nightmare trying to work what they're saying. That makes no sense. It
is impossible because you have only one vertical in one position on that globe.
Yeah.
So if you are at the certain point of this ball, this is your vertical, and if you move away 1 centimeter, you are on different vertical. So they are not parallel. So this is complete nonsense what he's writing.
He should know, right? On his model, there are no parallel verticals. So what's he doing writing verticals are parallel? I'd say Harry doesn't understand his model.
I would agree with that.
He's not got a clue. A string of non-coherent words don't make an argument. Just because people on the other side don't have an argument and they'll agree with you, because, I mean, why not? You're just saying a load of words. It's a non-argument, Harry. But nice try. We'll carry on, see how much further. If you just tilt them to be in their real vertical orientation, not in the paper vertical, then for them, how they see it, the same part of the curvature will now be dropping down from direction perpendicular to their vertical. I mean, did we go through a little bit about Dorothy talking about people using extra words that make things more complicated because they can't talk about it simply? I mean, this guy's just talking about hump and drop. This is the drop hump issue.
They cannot have both, so they have dilemma. Or we use double drop, then we cannot have hump. And if we have hump, we cannot have drop. So they have dilemma, what to choose.
I've been saying to him all along that they've got a contradiction wrapped up in this, but in order for them to accept this particular contradiction, what they've done is they've wrapped it up in a paralogism and then hidden it away. Now, they can't ever see this paralogism that they've hidden a contradiction wrapped up in. So they can't see the contradiction because they've hidden it in their own minds. And all Globers have done this. And they cannot address this contradiction of the drop and the hump. They will just constantly tell you, like they've built up these arguments for themselves, and they've found a load of compliant people that are not willing to ask them to explain this, because it's unexplainable. They don't have an explanation. They just go to other arguments all over the place. And this is what they're left with, a rambling, incoherent string of words that are just put together that obviously... Right, he says, one thing is to believe that this is not the description of reality on Earth. One thing is to believe that this is not the description of reality on Earth. But completely another thing is deliberately trying to misunderstand this simple description and pretend that you never heard anything like that. Maybe I could believe that I will met one person with IQ around 100 that will be acting like that. But seeing at least 3 of you doing this, putting this to another level, pun intended.
So at last statement, it was at home. But when he is saying one thing is to believe that this is not the description, this is not the description, and in the same sentence he is writing that we misunderstand this simple description. This guy is insane.
Yeah.
So in one sentence, he is writing that this is not description and it is description. Oh my God.
Yeah, you keep them vertical relative to the paper you drew them on. Then they could call that curvature of the part of the ball hump. But that is not their vertical. Vertical for them is parallel to the radial line in the spot where they are standing or where their boat is. If you just tilt them to be in their real vertical orientation, not in the paper vertical, then for them, how they see it, the same part of the curvature now will be dropping down from the direction perpendicular to their vertical. And if you don't agree with that, or if you don't not think that that isn't the real description of Earth, then guy's crazy. And yeah, I get these sort of comments daily. But this is just this is what happens when people meet the realizing Euclid test. It's just a simple geometric test applied to reality. They can't look at it. It's damaging for them. Mainly because we do use water levels. But I think really it's the geometric concepts that they can't handle. It's the straight lines. It's the planes. It's the logical syllogisms that are put together through geometry and logic and placed into reality. That's where the text chat trolls break down. And thanks for trying, Chike. It was a good effort. But you should definitely get some better people on the team. I have got some stuff to go over, I think, tomorrow. Are you around for a bit now, Kevin? Can we go over that? Because I've got some extra special stuff with our mate I Can Science that. I've put a few bits together.
I won't be able to do anything today.
No. Okay. No problem. I got some clips of him together. Let me get some of this. Can you science level?
They claim that gravity is the weakest force, right? Out of all the forces.
Oh, I don't know. They don't know what a force is. Don't get.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, going by their bullshit. But we know water weighs 8 pounds a gallon. So if you go from the equator to the bottom of that ball, force of whatever's holding it against the ball would have to be greater than the weight of the water.
I think you're doing more imagining on their model than they ever do. You just be giving them hints and tips. They'll go, oh, I'll have that. Sounds like a good one.
How can they accept that that's reality? It would crush any human. Never mind. You're right. I shouldn't be doing that. Sorry.
Right. Get you guys. Euclid night, was it? Was it Euclid night last week? Maybe it was. Yeah. Was it Euclid night last week? It might have been. Right. So let's have a look at this. Discord. And transition it over. Can you guys see that in
Yes.
Okay, now this is a conversation we're having think we'll listen to this.
That's what we can get out of tonight.
Or a traffic cop going, here's the deal. I don't want your deal, sir.
That's cute. Okay, I really
No, I
do
don't
gotta go.
want your deal. Is that cute?
It's been
Yeah.
a
Talk to
day.
you later.
It was a good day.
See, yes,
It has.
Thank you.
I'll leave
Indeed.
you with
See you
one
later.
I've been trying to catch this bit.
You cannot have a globe.
Handlers wanted you to leave a long time ago.
No kidding, right?
Right. Everybody's jumping in, but I Can Science That is about to come up with something. I think we can build modus tollens around this statement. But there is a bit of a lack of control there, but he had been winding us up a bit.
You cannot have a globe.
The people that were mad at you for talking
if
to us
water forms
wanted
a
you to
plane.
leave a long
Yeah.
time ago.
Did you hear that? Very quiet in the background. Think he's going to try it again.
You cannot have a globe.
He's got to say what he's got to say.
gotta
Like, it's
spout
like
it.
Yeah,
here's
he's
your
got to
script.
say it.
It starts off, you cannot have a globe.
Big E. We got to get
Yeah,
the Big E
come
in
on.
there. Go to your deity. Go to your God,
Say
dude. Go
globe
ahead.
again.
Go on, preach.
Go ahead.
Say globe
Preach it.
again.
Come on.
Preach it, brother. Preach it.
You
Get
cannot have a
globe in there
globe.
10 times.
Come on,
There you go.
Ricky. Let him
Cannot have a
do his
globe.
preaching bit. Come on. Jump on the
You
pulpit.
cannot have
Off
a
you go.
globe if water forms a plane.
You cannot have a globe if water forms a plane. Says, I can
This is
science
true.
that.
This is true.
That is
this
a
is
true
true.
statement. Yeah.
This is conditional,
think so.
true conditional statement. Yes.
I have no problem with that.
Sake, we could definitely formulate a modus tollens around such a statement, couldn't we?
Yes, by affirming this if. So if there is a plane, it would deny curved surface.
Yeah.
So,
So you'd have to say if big E is a curved surface, then you cannot have a plane.
yes, this kind of argument is called mixed because this is modus tollendo ponens. It means you are denying premise and therefore you are affirming plane, therefore you are denying globe.
Well, listen to
Oh.
a few more minutes of this. Just so we all heard that then, right? He's formulating a little bit of logic in his head. I quite like it. It's good. Listen a bit longer.
I think everybody can agree
Okay.
with that.
Whoa, that's
Yep,
good.
see you
Cannot have
later.
a globe if water forms a plane.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And if science tells us that
Science.
that the ocean is a globe, science cannot tell us water forms a plane.
There you go. How do you reckon to that?
Science cannot.
If
Why?
science tells us that the oceans form a globe, then science cannot say that water forms a plane. Says, I can science that. That's him sciencing it.
It's a statement with no meaning.
It
Yeah,
would,
this is gibberish.
Exactly.
yeah. But I mean, that's what he's saying. This is he can science that. So he's sciencing a water level by saying that science says the oceans form a globe.
And he's skeptic.
Mm-hmm.
I could see him saying that, at the end of the night at some pub, but not live on air.
Yeah, Chikey's
Sober.
come back. He said water. Water forms a plane. If water forms a plane, you cannot have a globe. That's I can science that said. Very clearly. Well done, Chikey. He's leading the way.
Science.
Mm-hmm.
Those are
Chikey
inconsistent
said,
statements. We already
water, not oceans.
Yeah.
This is like atmosphere is not air. This is Rumpus's statement.
No, he did say if water forms a plane, then you cannot have a globe. Like,
Yes,
he
but-
didn't mention oceans, Chike. Yeah, we know. A water level is a tool that does establish a horizontal plane. But, I mean, that does go against what science that says. But, I mean, you have a model that dictates otherwise. He didn't mention the oceans within the first bit. He just said, because his science, globe science, says that the oceans form a globe, 'tis globe, then that science, he says, can't say that a water level is a tool that establishes a horizontal plane, which is very good. If you find out that a water level is a tool for establishing a horizontal plane, then I don't know. By science, that's sort of logic, is it? Let's
We
listen.
agreed.
Brilliant.
So
Yeah,
you can't pick one of those statements and say that is science.
interesting. So you can
And
have your
deny
God.
the other
You can have your
statement.
God. All right, thank you. We got
Yeah.
it. We got it. So
yeah, we understand that.
So here,
It's one or the other.
since
can't
somebody
pick
was
one.
so intent on putting words in other people's mouths, let me do it just out of fun. I mean, I'm just spitballing here. Here, let me just say what he said. You can't have your globe God if a water level is a tool to establish a horizontal plane of reference.
That's what he said, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's
If a
incorrect.
water
That is
level
incorrect
is a tool that establishes a
characterization
horizontal
of my
plane, poof goes the globe.
Sorry.
Yep.
Hey, simple as this.
You lose your deity.
You guys-
Oh, well.
You guys are trying to claim that science says something.
I see
science
why
does
you're
not.
We're not
fighting
trying to
for
do
it
that.
so hard now. I think I've got it.
Science does not.
We're not
claim-
trying to do that. That's a lie. We're waiting for you to prove to us that a water level tool doesn't establish a horizontal. As soon as you can do that,
he can't do. He's just said. He
I didn't say
said
that. I never said that.
out of science that's mouth. If a water level establishes a horizontal plane, there can be no globe.
No, I didn't say that, Bev. Let's
What
be
was your statement
precise.
then?
If water forms a perfect plane, there can be no globe.
who says that?
Mm-hmm.
Who
I
says
What
think
about
that's
that?
water within a
I
water
think we've
level
established
tool?
that.
Yeah, exactly. If water forms a plane, well, what's in a water level?
Water.
Mhm.
If water acts differently in water level 2 or and not in water level 2,
Mhm.
for me it doesn't. Only from some circumstances like winds, atmosphere, whatever. But normally, when it is at rest, it acts the same.
So, I mean, that's science. That, I mean, he's got science in his name, like Blue Marble Science. And he says, if a water level establishes, well, he says water, plane. If water within a water level, for instance, establishes a plane, not just horizontal, but any plane, then they can't have their globe model. That's right, isn't it, Chikey?
What about a water level tool, preacher?
Do you think that that water in the tool behaves differently than water outside the tool?
Yes.
No.
Wow. I mean, maybe that's what we should talk about sometime in the future.
Maybe you should go
Nice.
research it and learn about it, and then come back with a little more respect, a little less of the attitude
talk
that
to me about
we are
respect.
stupid and talking over me, and then complain about people talking
Don't
over
you
you
talk to me
like
about
every other
respect.
dumbass Glober does, and
I
come
did
back
not
with a
call
little,
anybody names.
Yeah, I think we've gone past it there. But I mean, yeah, that's the bit that I want. I think I'm gonna have to cut that little bit out there and put that with the globe science claims of water level. I mean, but you have to remember that this is all coming around because we did the realizing Euclid test that used the water level to establish a horizontal plane, in which we showed that no part of that straight line or plane lay within the plane, and another part without it. It didn't rise up out of the plane at all. All stayed within the same plane. And it's that geometric test that we performed in reality that they don't like the results of. Even though they don't really know what the results are. It's just their thought results that they're scared of. And they don't want to have to do the test for themselves, even though it is really cheap to be able to do. And most of it is a logical process that you can work out in your mind. A geometric process. Very much like the they were saying for the tools of the trivium. It's like my finishing project, to be able to use the rhetoric to be able to explain it, put myself up against the peers and take the criticism of it. It's all coming together perfectly, as though it was like in a part of a plan, really. The scramblings of a Chaiki to realise. I mean, he's had to write logical twice in one sentence. And he didn't do too well. Chaiki can't even write a logical statement with the word logical in it. So, I mean, I don't know why globe science is bringing into question the water level. I mean, if they know what a water level is, why don't they show us? Why can't they prove it to us? Why do they have to go against a realizing Euclid geometric test in order to start calling what a water level is? It's very illogical to imagine that there's a drop or a hump. Yet model afflicted people do actually do that, and they go as far as to say their science says otherwise. It's very confusing to me. It's very illogical for them to be able to say that their model says that a water level or water can't form a plane. What about you, Paper? What do you reckon? How logical is it for a globe science guy with his science in his name? He says, I can science that. How scientific is it for him to say, science says globe, therefore science can't say water forms a plane?
This is, of course, bias, and this is affirming the consequent fallacy because and circular reasoning. So this is no logic here in that science statement, because it is not scientific, because you can infer a conclusion from premise. So if premise is true and water indeed is creating a plane, so of course you cannot have a globe, and it is creating a plane.
Quite
So
obviously.
yes. So globe. Therefore, globe doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. That's why I'm saying, how logical do you think it is for somebody to say that? I mean, if they had any idea of what logic was, they definitely wouldn't say that, because it would be exposing their ridiculous model to everybody, to show everybody, wouldn't it? You would have to be seriously illogical to say that. Something's happened to your logical process for you to be allowed to say that statement.
Yes, in one sentence we have impossibility, therefore plane, because plane is impossible on the globe. But on the so-called science side, we have statement that because we have globe, therefore we cannot have plane. So we have contradiction here.
And if they had any formal training in any sort of logic, they would be able to see that contradiction and root out the fallacy in the statement. But they don't. They can't. And I'd say that's a little bit embarrassing. To expose, I'd say, I still think what I Can Science That has done with that very statement, he's exposed his model.
Yes, he exposed his model as impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, he's opened up the heart shot, hasn't he? Like it's a death throw. It's the end. How much are all of the other people like Chaiki and all of that going to have to obfuscate around that fact?
This is the end of argument, so you cannot do that much. You can only use some Schopenhauer's trick or atoms or whatever, but not argument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I consider I just need to get that one little clip and put that together with the other bits, which I'll do tomorrow, and then I'll put a few bits together. And because Globe Science has told me I'm a scammer, apparently. Globe Science has said a load of things through the voice of I Can Science That. And in doing so, all I have to do is let everybody know what Globe Science has said and what Globe Science states. Everyone can do their own research to find their own proofs and their own truths, but I would suggest realizing Euclid gives you a training within geometry, which hopefully leads to the training in logic and the understanding in logic, which hopefully then brings you to have a discussion with us about the trivium and how it all starts and how we can relearn things together. Every conversation is a learning process, and it can all add together, like the lady says at the beginning of that. Whether she's learned or not, it doesn't make a difference, because the conversation may aid others to get a bit of learning. I consider everything as a learning. There's no good or bad learning there. It's all learning. How to talk to people, how to understand people, how to talk to people better for the next time. Every conversation is a learning process.
Yes, and should be.
I think. What's Dan talking about? Dan, you're far too triggered to be real, you know. Or, I mean, are you that real that you do actually... you can't have got that triggered about... We're just having a conversation. Yeah. Dan, if you're talking to Chaik... yeah, I think you're exposing yourself as to where you are. And what you're doing. What your intentions are. If you want to come in and discuss logic, Dan, you know where we are. In fact, I think I'm going to be shutting it down soon anyway. this is a show. This is Logic Night. And we've just been outlaying the lost tools of learning. If you want to come and show us what you've learned, show everybody. You next level Discord. You're always free to come in. I've been saying a little bit recently, because I think, sorry to say, flat earthers, I think flat earth is dying. You're losing all of your superstars. Ranty did a runner as soon as he could. Katz is gone. There's a lot of people who've gone missing. They used to be around, but they've gone. There's not the superstars left in the arena. So what we're looking for is some flat earth heroes to come in. And I think Dan's your man. Yeah, water is level, Dan, but it's the level that we're talking about. Why is there a discussion? It's a straight line or a circle. 2022. Men of science can't tell whether things are straight lines or circles. Nobody can critically think about it anymore, apparently. You can agree with the globe science if you want and say it's a ball. But then, like I Can Science that says, you have to lose the plane. You have to lose the horizontal plane. Not just
horizontal being straight line, of course.
Yeah. With its relationship of being perpendicular to a vertical. Like Saragaki's proof states. As vertical is perpendicular to horizontal, so is plumb perpendicular to level. And since vertical is what a plumb bob establishes, we can make the similar relationship of vertical to plumb. And because of both of the relationships of perpendicularity, we can also establish in the same relationship as horizontal to level. It's a very, very simple one-to-one similarity. Can't be faulted. Perfect Saragaki logic. Using axiom number 1, Euclidean geometry. It's not really, it's a common notion, so.
This is first principle of reasoning, so.
Yeah.
You
It
cannot,
spans mathematics, algebra, and geometry. The whole
yes,
lot.
this is first principle. That's why you cannot go backward from this, because this is so obvious.
Dan's saying the flat earthers hate him too. Nobody over here hates you, Dan. I mean, we don't hate people at all. Like I say, I learn from every conversation. I'm going to learn from the conversations we've had, and I'm going to try to not trigger you, but I didn't know what I triggered you with in the first place, so I don't know. But I'm going to try. I can switch. We have what we call a snowflake switch. It's normally reserved for George Nutsack and other people like that. I mean, we have had to switch it on for a fair few people. I think we switched it on for I Can Science that. So yeah, Dan, I'm not saying that I don't want to talk to you. I definitely don't hate people. And Rob Keane likes you. 4 hearts. Chaiki says, lol at you, learn. We do learning all the time. Tonight's been how we learn. The lost tools of learning. More learning, the better. The quicker we can learn, the better. Dan. Wow.
This is not true. This is not style of your communication to accuse people. But
name one thing that I've accused people of.
I think he's provocateur.
Oh, wait a minute. I've accused Jesse Kozlowski of not being a real surveyor. He's not around to defend it. I don't know. I don't know what else. Give us something else. Yeah. Balanced Truth says it's because I'm English. And he does have a dislike of English people for some reason. Yeah, Chaiki. Yep. You are a useless piece of shite. I'll stand by that as well. I think people will agree with me. I might even get it on a t-shirt if you were important enough, Chike. Get it quoted on a t-shirt. Right. Think to save Dan from any more embarrassment, I best end it. Thanks for watching. There's not been many people watching tonight, but I really like these sort of shows, and this learning that I've got from this book so far is inspirational. We are going to take this whole method of learning. I don't see anybody else doing this, and I think there is definitely a need for someone to go over this sort of stuff in a simple way that everyone can come along and join in with. We're not trying to be university students here. We're not that. This is advanced simplicity.
I kind of feel bad for those that missed this because it was really an enlightening evening for sure.
Sure. Yeah, well, we will be going over this again, and I perhaps should start labeling my videos a bit more precisely and putting them into groups so we can learn this, because I think it deserves us going over this, call it a program or whatever. I might go back and try and get the old one of Ravens, and we might start the whole thing off again from the beginning. Think that is only right if we do that, and I'll bring Raven back from his old show to start it off again, and we'll go over it properly. And yes,
repetition serves well. This is old Latin wording that repetitio est mater studiorum. It means that repetition is mother of learning.
Very nice. Yeah, thanks for being here, Chaiki. Thanks for everybody else who could join in with us. This is our new style, our new thing. We're all about learning. We want to bring as many people with us as possible. This style that we're doing, look at what it does to the trolls. You completely disarm them of any sort of power that they ever had. Even their trolling abilities look ridiculous. And that's even with the people that have science in the name. You know that's a sign that they're ridiculous. Chaiki, Jose banned us. He called us racist. I don't think anybody's going to be going over there and helping Jose out.
Racist?
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned that he's got some chihuahuas, so he managed to turn that into a thing where he was calling everybody racist and banning us because we were horrible. You know, in order for Chaiki to have that narrative of we're horrible people and we do all of that, well, they all just make up shit and slander us publicly. That's the best argument they have, the best style that they have, or anything.
Maybe it is his job now.
Yeah. Advanced simplicity. Get on board with it. Advanced simplicity of logic, advanced simplicity of geometry, advanced simplicity of reasoning, advanced simplicity of conversation. That's what we're all about from now on. Thanks for joining us. Tomorrow it is the hump. Trivium hump day. Yeah, no, that's not slander calling you a piece of shit, Chaiki. That's definitely not slander. All right. Thank you very much. And join us tomorrow. Anybody got any final words? Or are we done? Okay. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.
It's the echo in your brain. You know you can't sustain the misconceptions in your mind. One day you'll see for sure what all of this was for. Then you can leave it all behind. The journey begins. I am the one, yeah, that will show the proof. I am the one, yeah, that is searching for the truth. I am the whispers of the logic in your mind. I am an agent of the Logos. In the beginning was found this thing that cannot speak. It's how we all truly learn. It's only ever attained when one lets go of fear. So don't let wisdom pass you by. The journey begins. I am the one here that will show the proof. I am the one here that is searching for the truth. I am the whispers of the logic in your mind. I am an agent of the Logos. It was there all along. How could I never have seen this thing that's danced all around? It wasn't until I left behind the things I believed that I could see things so clear. The journey begins here. Become the one here that will show the proof. Become the one here that is searching for the truth. Become the whispers of the logic in their minds. Become an agent of the Logos. Become an agent of the Logos. We are the agents of the Logos.